Defining Duke, an Xbox podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support the show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Salutations, everybody. It is Maddie here today, and welcome to episode 163 of Defining Duke, an Xbox podcast. We're not a PlayStation podcast. We're not a Switch podcast. No. It appears the brand is here to stay. COG, we have some job security.
Bro.
My friend, you know, we've been riding by the seat of our pants these last few weeks, so I got to know, how's my lovely co-host doing?
Not the greatest. It's been a crazy week, man. I'm fresh off my beloved 49ers heartbreaking Super Bowl gut-wrenching loss. I'm processing, man. You know how you go through the stages of the heartbreak when the Band-Aid gets ripped off and you're sitting there, the confetti's flying. I felt like the confetti was flying on my face. Like, you know, they got the beams and the confetti. Like, I was sitting there, and then, you know, everybody coming at you. So I was like, I got to get off social media for a little bit.
I left you be for a few days.
Thank you for your kindness. Thanks for everyone who reached out that had love for me. It was like, yo, bro, I'm not even a Niners fan, but I felt that one, bro.
OT, man.
OT, you know, we had our chances, and when a team that great, you leave them around, you leave them hanging around, you know, that's the things that can happen to you. So you had that. Obviously, we got all the craziness with this situation, which we're about to talk about today, with last week in the rumors. Then we coming off the crossover, which was amazing for LSM, you know what I mean? But as far as on a personal level, I've been low. I've been like kind of taking care of personal stuff, but at the same time, just kind of getting away. Because this is what I'll say. I've noticed behaviors of people really annoying me. And before I jump out of character and be disrespectful and crazy, it's best I just fall back.
Remove yourself from the situation?
Yeah, just get away from the situation. You know what I'm saying? Because again, it's not just 49ers. This is just like everything social media. I just been annoyed. I'm like, really? Like, this person's doing this? And so it's just a lot of that going on. I'm just like, man, I'm here for these games. I'm here to have some fun, bug out. So I just disconnected myself, and I needed that for my mental health, just to kind of, so I slowly plugged in. I obviously had to plug in today for reasons. And, you know, I'm repping Mercurial, you know, right now I'm on Team Curio. I'm doing a lot of Infinite Wealth. We'll get into all that other stuff. And I'm hopefully today after, I'm not the man who erased his console. So that's what we do. Or erase this podcast. That's the theme of it.
Sure had to have something behind it. Yeah.
That's the theme of it. So I'm Kiryu energy. Ichiban still number one, still the man, but it's a lot of Kiryu energy there. We happy we around today. We happy we exist.
Or reliable, you know?
Exactly. So how have you been? What's been going on with you? I feel like we haven't talked in a minute. You know, we've been moving at 100 miles. I've been doing I did 3 podcasts. I did 2 summon signs, Constellation.
Yeah, no, we've been all over the network. Yeah, we usually, you know, for those who are listening to us, last week was such a strong performing episode for us. We kind of expected it, but the outcrying of positive support was really what mattered most. It wasn't even the view count, man. It was a tough conversation to have, of course. There was a lot of hysteria. I felt like we leveled out pretty well, covered all angles. And I feel like the reaction to that episode really spoke to what we do well here. And so, you know, I'm just really happy. I'm proud of us. I'm proud of the Sacred Symbols guys. I'm thankful they came on and offered their viewpoints, because I think it really rounded out the show in a healthy way. As we said at the end of that episode, it was going to be just COG and I this week to talk about the future of Xbox, because we don't want to get too off the rails with what our show is. But just want to say I appreciate everyone coming in. That was really awesome to see, and I'm glad people enjoyed the thumbnail. Me and Dustin worked hard on that. Some people got in their feels over it, but we thought the Joe Biden meme was pretty fucking funny, so we were like, let's go with it. But yeah, man, I've been in the disconnect wave for a little bit, so I've been doing all right lately. Just focusing on my health a little bit more. I got a Peloton this week. That was the bright spot this week. Yeah, not like a full price one. I've wanted one for years, but you look at the price tag, you're like, plus the subscription service. Nah, I really can't. I would love to splurge, but no. But Laylee's friend was selling it for half price, and I thought, you know what? We're going to pick up that U-Haul. We're going to go get it. And we did. And so I've been using it. And that thing is a serious workout. I underestimated. I was like, oh, dude, I can get down with some biking. It's like an alter. I'm like, no. At the 30 minutes, my legs are cooked. Funny story, though.
Let's go.
I didn't know this. The Peloton has these shoes that are built specifically for the bike, right? These shits latch into the bike pedals. So I'm doing my first workout. Thank God, I'll preface this, by the way. Laylee's home, by the way. So I'm doing our first workout. I'm pedaling away, 30 minutes in, sweating up a storm, sore as could be. Get to the end, I'm like, let's go. I did it. Like, all right, time to get off this thing. I go pull my foot. Nothing. I can't move my foot off the pedal. And they're supposed to lock in so that like you're staying in stride and that you could stand on the bike, sit on the bike. Like there's workouts you can do on the bike. It's pretty cool. But they do that so that your foot's not flying off or momentum's carrying you. Like you're doing every pedal, which is a good idea. But my foot's locked into this pedal now. I'm like, oh. And, I remember I saw like a little latch that hooks in under. So I was like, I'm just going to pull my foot at an angle. Everything I'm doing is not working. So I'm stuck. I'm like, all right, bet. I'm going to take the shoe off then. So I'm trying to like hang on to the side of this bike, reaching over, trying to get out of this shoe. No. And the shoe is like 2 straps and then another like Velcro strip. Well, not Velcro, but it's like a strip that slides in, couple notches. Mm-hmm. So it's in there pretty firm. So I'm trying to like get my foot out of that. I go, okay, I'm starting to panic a little bit. I can't get my foot out of the shoe and my shoe is stuck to the machine. And so my brain's immediately like, wow, what if I was like home alone? Like I'd just be glued to this thing right now. So I'm sitting there trying to figure it out. I'm tightening the shoe by accident. So I'm like, now I'm really stuck here.
Really freaking out now.
Turns out there's just a button you press and it releases the hold. I call Lily on the phone. I'm like, hey, babe, I'm stuck in the Peloton. You're not coming to get me. So she just comes out. I'm just sitting there like, hey, yeah, you mind helping me out? She actually got me loose. And the shoes are still on the Peloton pedals. I read on Reddit, they said you got to take an axle key and twist them loose. I was on the verge of removing the pedal from the bike. I was like, this isn't working. So right now my shoes are pretty much fucking glued to this thing. I got to figure it out. But I want to start off with that story there. So I'm doing good otherwise. Yeah.
That is hilarious. Not to kill you too much, but it's like I know the feeling of panic when you can't escape. So
dude, it was out of a sitcom. Like I laughed it off first, and when I was really stuck, I was like, "Yo, if I'm home alone, man, I'm just gonna be on this bike for how long? My legs are sore. I gotta put my legs down." I was like, "What if this thing falls over? How do I get out?"
Over, and then you stuck with it.
Every thought went through my head, and that second, my foot got stuck.
Yo, that story! Wow, that's one of your best stories. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, so the Pelotons brought me a lot of fear and joy in my life. So
shout out to the Peloton.
That was a time, but otherwise, been gaming. This isn't going to be another standard episode of Defining Duke. As in we have the audience write-ins, but we don't have the structure this week of like, here's all the news bites and then here's what we're playing. We will, at least the plan is, get back to that next week. We're trying to make sure we're adjusting our show properly to how the news is. And I say this with all respect to the Sager boys, but the 6-hour shows are like their thing. I don't want to make our standard show and then incorporate this in there. I really want to save our energy and our focus for what I think everyone wrote in about. We appreciate everyone who wrote in, did another emergency Defining Duke thread on patreon.com/lastdaymedia. You could write in there. We had almost 200 write-ins in like less than an hour.
Wow.
Which is crazy. Yeah. A lot of people want to talk about this thing. And so we're going to do just that. So the focus of this episode naturally is going to be about the Xbox business update. It's a 20-minute podcast. I recommend you give it a listen so you can come up with your own thoughts and feelings before stepping into this. But we're going to pick it apart for everything it's worth. It's all time-stamped on the Xbox podcast, from exclusivity to Game Pass to sustainability in the industry and so much more. So give that a listen. Make sure you're ready. Come in here. And we had a lot of write-ins here, Cog. But as I said last week in the episode, with so much going on, feels like now we can settle in and focus a little bit more, because there was a lot of hysteria going further and further beyond the boundaries of what's actually happening here. So now that we've got this check-in from Phil Spencer, Matt Booty, Sarah Bond, how are we feeling? What's the general feel right now?
I mean, it's very strange, because my initial feel is I came in expecting the absolute worst, get the Band-Aid ripped off as far as, third party, where you stand, hardware, where you stand. And ultimately, it's going to sound funny, but nothing really has changed. I don't want to use hyperbolic words as this was a nothing burger or, I just felt like they clearly wanted to respond to the rumors in their way. I do feel there were some missteps when it comes to the 4 games. We will get into that with further questions. I do feel that they wanted to reiterate what was not coming, what was not happening versus what is actually happening. So I thought that.
Good read. Yeah.
And it was just, I gotta be honest, like there was a bit of awkwardness. You could tell like they clearly was not really comfortable being here. Like Phil looked a little uncomfortable. I actually liked homegirl, Tina, I always forget her name.
Tina. Yep.
Tina. I thought she asked fair questions.
Yeah, probably heavily vetted, but they asked the questions.
They asked the questions. Now, as far as the answering of all of the questions, that we will get into. Again, just overview, oversight, just from a human level. I thought it was important and for Sarah to not be the initiator of the bad news. And what I mean by that is her first quote unquote appearance as head of Xbox to deliver a multi-platform strategy, I personally felt probably isn't the best look from a fanboy emotionality standpoint. She'll be looked at as the villain. I thought that was a good call. Again, this is corporate cock speak right now. For Phil to at least start that discussion, she had her points. Matt looked at like
Matt was chilling, bro.
But he had like a very rigid, stern. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much in the booty. Like he just seemed like it's hard. Like not that he didn't want to be there, but just like he just seemed like I got a different vibe from him, like in a funny way.
Not
like
totally, yeah.
It was just
different.
Totally different, you know what I'm saying, kind of thing. Not in a bad way. I just couldn't put my finger on it, but it was funny. But look, overall, I think that, and I can just speak for myself, as a person who is used to platforms going away. I'm an older gentleman, so I've seen it happen, right? I didn't get the sense that that's happening, and that I felt was good from a stability standpoint, but they still left things in the table. And this is the classic vintage Microsoft problem, right? Which is kind of like, what did you really answer? And that will always haunt them. And I think this was purposely done. They are not wanting to say specific things for right now. You know what I mean? I'm going to leave it to the teams and all that stuff. And again, we'll get into it. So look, I think the core will be relieved that the worst that happened. But for people who want legitimate clarity, I don't think they necessarily answered that. And that's going to be for them to deal with, and that's why questions will still remain. But what are your top level thoughts? Very, very strange today, but I'm just curious how you took all this.
Yeah, I definitely didn't walk away feeling pretty great in the sense of, I get it now. I felt this was the chance to make a lot of wrongs right. I think there's been a lot of community outcry about many things for Xbox for years now, particularly about exclusivity. Like people just want to know what they're going to play here, guys. And like it's really come to a head, and you kind of presented more questions than answers on that. And I don't find that acceptable. I'll have my whole spiel on that. By the way, Cog and I think we like each other's thoughts so much. We try to hold it back until we're on the show. Yes. But I warned Cog. I said, when we get to that moment where we're talking about what was said in the show versus the interview, I am not holding back. So we'll talk about that. I'm not a fan of that at all. It definitely had the vibe, like you said, that no one wanted to be there. No one wanted to be doing that at all. Generally, though, this felt a lot like, okay, we're about to make a dramatic shift, and we've tried to do that before with the Xbox One. We had this digital-only DRM focused, the Kinect in the box. We went really aggressive because we foresee this is where the industry is going, and people, even if they don't get it now, they will get it. And they learned there that gamers do not budge easy. The PS4 smoked them, and even though we ended up where they projected, Xbox was way too early and way too aggressive, right? And so what I detected here with this podcast is, we're going multiplat. Like those, I have a personal feeling that in 5 to 10 years, exclusives won't be a big deal.
You put that out there.
I have quotes upon quotes. I wrote down a lot of key points throughout this. There's every single reason why, despite them saying it's just 4 games and we're feeling out, you should, for every single reason I'll list later, believe that many more games are going to leave Xbox over time. And that's not to fearmonger. That's not to say abandon the platform. Please take it as I am saying it, which is just that they've made it very clear that they are taking a, quote, wait and see approach, because that is super safe for them PR wise, because if they charge headfirst into where the industry probably will go, they will have another Xbox One. So they're waiting for, we saw the PlayStation news, more PC, cohesion, right? They're trying to get there quicker, potentially now day and date. We'll see. How Divers 2 is doing phenomenal. That game looks awesome. I really want to play it. So it's popping PC off with that PC and PlayStation simultaneous launch. So the industry, maybe not Nintendo, we'll see, but like the industry seems to be trending that way for this growth that they've been chasing, for this sustainability they've been chasing. And Xbox is making the first move toward that. We'll see if PlayStation does that at all, when. But Xbox is making the first move toward that. And I have so many reasons to believe that they are going straightforward in that direction, but they do not want to publicly commit on such a strong level, because they've seen when you do that, when you go in a direction that is where it will go, but people aren't ready for it, what is going to happen to your brand. And that would be severe damage that they probably could not survive. They could not undo, because all confidence would be lost. So for the people who, and we have many write-ins who are frustrated on the vague approach and why there's immediate undoings of things said in the podcast that interviews are suggesting not, it's very much because I think the plan, they're trying to keep it shrouded because there's something much larger at play, which we'll talk about beyond these 4 games. Xbox on any screen was a big thing they were talking about. Yes. And so I think they're just not storming in that direction to keep their brand safe until the industry is ready and used to that idea. So what you're seeing here is Xbox kind of forced into a spot because of reports and rumors. Maybe they could have done it a different way. And making sure they try to just shut people up for long enough until, again, that there's enough moves made where it's not that big of a question mark if you saw something like Starfield say see ya to Xbox fans and go elsewhere, like PlayStation, maybe even a Switch 2 or something like that. That's my general feels. I feel overall very corpo say nothing approach. And we actually kind of have a write-in about this, Cog. I want to dish your way because it's pretty much specifically for you. James Daniels writes, I'd be intrigued for Cog's take, but as someone who lived in and around corp comms for the past 15 years, this feels a lot like, quote, denial, non-denial, end quote. A lot of repeating corp key marketing messages, a lot of, look, it's us 3, trust us, without exuding the usual confidence, and a lot of eggshell treading. If the Tom Warren report is correct, is there a potential that these games are either A, deliberately lower tier to try and gently open the floodgates, or B, deliberately chosen by the Trinity as a means of then seeing it as not a massive success, thus enabling them to go back to Satya and the board and say, see, other consoles won't bite. Be intrigued to hear your thoughts on what turns out to be a whole lot of a nothing burger. I don't, not to single out James, but I don't agree with the idea that it was a nothing burger, because there was a lot said here, again, specifically the fact that they're, I think, committing to multi-plat more than what people are taking at face value, but also like the hardware commitments, Game Pass only on Xbox. We'll talk about all this, but
absolutely.
Corporate Cog, please step in. What did you think here about what James Daniel wrote in about?
I think there's some truth to what James is saying in terms of the eggshelling, and this was a difficult thing for them to handle. And what I mean from this, we talked about this coming into this, like, I'm curious on what verbiage they were going to use, how they were going to approach this. This is very difficult, and I can tell they were being extremely careful with their words. I will say this. Thank God it wasn't a blog post. That's the first thing, because I did not want that. So at least we got to see them. Now, to James's point, I will say this, and I said this on the crossover. I am a firm believer that the 3 that we saw on that screen are the 3 that are in favor of seeing the course out the most, as far as the vision with Game Pass, the studio acquisitions, and where they got to, right? I am of the firm belief, like I said in the crossover, that there is an opposing faction that wants to maximize the amount of revenue and profit that they possibly can now that they have an ABK, right? So what I gathered out of this is, yes, this is for now. You know what I'm saying? This is for in an experimental phase. Now, I will say this, that I do agree with James, is that when you look at the 4, I'm annoyed that they did not just name the 4. Like, can we just rip that off? Like, why
adding
are we
to the rumors, adding to the speculation? Bad.
I get it. Yo, you want to give the teams the ability, but it's at this point we need to dispel. You were quick to name what's not coming, right? You're quick to say, yo, it's not Starfield, not Indy. Okay, interesting. So that resonated in the building that you had to diffuse that. Yeah. But you won't say the 4, but you're basically saying the 4 by the way you describe the 4. Smaller, whatever, right? And then, a couple of lives or things that we felt should have a bigger audience. So look, there is a part of me that believes what James says, that for these 3, if I had to guess, these are a core 3 that doesn't necessarily want to speed into the multi-platform era. And they want to see how things go. And I'm not going to say sabotage, but I have to believe that, look at Helldivers, for example. PlayStation is learning that when you catch that zeitgeist, day and date PC, look at the most concurrent users they've had in Steam, the most success they've seen at concurrently, right? So there's a part
God of War, right?
Yeah, it's insane what Helldivers is doing. So there's a part of me that's like, okay, and I said this on the crossover, how much realistically are you going to get from these 1 year older titles? Because you notice he kept Phil stressed. These are a year old. These are, they're trying to soften the blow. This is old stuff, guys. You know what I'm saying? Like, so to me, my thing is, how much revenue do you, not that it's self-sabotage, but how much revenue do you think you're really getting here? So that's a legitimate question, right? So we shall see. But as far as the first part of what he says, open the floodgates, I think there's truth to that too. I'm not going to sit here and fool myself into thinking, hey guys, only this 4, nothing else. It's a one-time thing. Like, look, once you try a little something on the outside, come on, like once you jump outside your marriage, like, yo, it was just one time, and bro, can you really look at that person and say, as that's your partner, and that, we was at the club and this went down. If you're the person that comes, you're the person that they coming home to, you gonna tell me that it's gonna be just that? Of course not. So we gotta have fun with this, right? And that's why part of me is like, so if the experiment goes well, I guess we're going to catch you outside of the club again with other situations, right? What happens if it goes well?
I love how good this analogy works.
Right, because it's like, I love you, and I realize, it wasn't all that. You know what I'm saying? Like, what if it's all that? What happens then? So it's fun. I agree to both statements. I think there's a little truth in both. But I'm curious about you when you heard the 4 in the corporate speak. What did you take from that?
Well, let's run down some of the information here. Yeah, right. And then I'll give you my thoughts on it. Right. So I got this split into a bunch of sections here in my OneNote for Windows 10. It says, I've been using this for years, man. It's just it's like great for like little idea vomiting and whatnot, but it's also where I took notes. So for exclusivity, this is the main things that they said during here. 4 games to other consoles, just 4 games. And they emphasized here that it was not some sort of change to their exclusivity policy, which we really don't know much about, might I add there. Like, we don't know what's your exclusivity policy for existing IP that you got from Bethesda and Activision. Like, we don't know what that is. But one thing that was really emphasized here was long-term, health-driven decision-making. They said they want to use other platforms to grow these franchises. They looked at games, as Cog said earlier, over a year old. 2 of them are community-driven games that they feel have reached their potential on Xbox and PC. 2 of the others are smaller games that were, quote, never really meant to be platform exclusives, end quote. He says he wants to drive more, he being Phil, wants to drive more business value out of these games to create more sequels out of them. They said if they want to explore these platforms moving forward, they will. and that this is the possibility of introducing players to other franchises by using these platforms. Now, it has been reported by Tom Warren of The Verge that these games are Hi-Fi Rush, Pentiment, Sea of Thieves, and Grounded. And I do think it's a shame that Sunset Overdrive is not one of these picks, by the way. Right? Just want to throw it out there. That would have been a fucking great pick.
Just they don't control it no more. That's the thing. Yeah.
Would have been a great pick if they could have figured something else out for that. Phil said, don't take this as a signal that everything is coming to PlayStation and Switch. It's not. Yet, before this, Phil mentioned how this was a learning experience for them, right? Like, we're going to do this and we're going to learn. And that's been the quote. That's been the key. Like, you really saw here during this podcast, marketing statements clearly matter to this team a lot. They kept doing the play anywhere, all screens, play where you want to play, whatever shit they say, right? And so the key beat out of this was we're going to put these out there and see what we learn. We're learning from this. We're learning. Like, that's what they've been saying. So he mentions how they were learning from this, yet at the same time, this isn't opening the floodgates. And there's no changes to how they think about exclusivity, which to me, I feel these statements kind of contradict themselves. Now, a couple more notes here of what Phil said during this section. He said he doesn't want to name the games in the show, that they'll apparently be announced soon. So maybe by next week's episode, we'll have those. There's been rumors of a Nintendo Direct that actually got delayed because of this business event, which is pretty freaking crazy when you think about it. Nintendo literally they bow to no one. And apparently they're moving around for Xbox. Okay. But Phil said when they come out, they'll make sense, which again will be interesting. As Cog mentioned earlier, they're not Starfield, they're not Indiana Jones. Phil thinks that within the next 5 to 10 years, that exclusives are going to be a smaller piece of the pie per generation. And Matt Booty said this later, but I thought it was pertinent to this section. 10 major games will be releasing from Xbox this year, with more to be shared at the June showcase. So, with all of that kind of rounded up, my initial takeaway is these games make sense. These are not too big where you're doing, I think, serious damage to the brand. It's interesting to see the 2 lone exclusives that dropped in 2022, that without those, you would have had nothing in 2022, are ones leaving the platform. Like, there is some symbolism there of like, man, like these were saviors for some in a very barren year for the ecosystem, and now they're out. But 2 live service games, I don't think anyone's really going to argue. It's going to be cool to see Grounded and Sea of Thieves go out and find out what they do, right? They're seeking more growth. A lot of this is about growth. I don't really have an issue with any of these selections. I think I would have more issues with something like Starfield or Indiana Jones. I'm like, hey, you just got this big IP game. That's what fans have been seeking for a while. Hey, by that I mean indie. Or hey, you just got the new IP that felt like a tentpole, the way you marketed, the way you talked about it, the way the hype was. Like, you fed into that. And so, look at that collectible behind COG, right? Like, you put merch behind it. Like, you put a lot into that. To immediately rip that away, I would have had a lot more objections with. Where things get complicated is, I think, not only within this podcast, where there's a couple of back and forths, it seemed, but after the fact, when sites were allowed to, I guess, interview Phil about what was happening here. Right. And so we had The Verge, we had Video Game Chronicle, we had all these reports going around. And there was one quote in particular that I wanted to bring up here. And it was when Phil Spencer spoke with The Verge on if Starfield and Indiana Jones will ever come to PlayStation 5. Here's the full quote. I don't think we should, as an industry, ever roll out a game going to any other platform. We're focused on these 4 games and we're learning from that experience. But I don't want to create a false expectation on those other platforms that this is somehow the first 4 to get over the dam and the dam's going to open and that everything else is coming. That's not the plan today. I also don't want to mislead customers on those other platforms. We're launching 4 games and we're excited about it. We're excited about the business and everything else, but we'll see what happens for our business, end quote. So let's get some write-ins here. Angel writes, howdy, boys. Did you guys see the Verge interview with Phil Spencer that went up after the podcast? Phil said on the podcast, no Starfield or Indie coming to other consoles, but in the interview, they said they won't rule out the possibility. Why does it seem they're already backtracking what they just said about exclusivity? What is going on behind the scenes at Xbox? We also have Jamal Bashara, who wrote in, hey, Dukes, The idea that there's no fundamental change to exclusivity while they clearly experiment with titles is complete nonsense, right? So thank you, Angel and Jamal, for writing in. If you're interested in writing in, you go to patreon.com/laststandmedia, where you have over 13,000 of you. We appreciate all of your support there. Thank you for being a part of what we do. And so I look at this, Cog, and this is where my frustration with Xbox lies.
Talk to me.
I'm not trying to take my victory lap because I don't think it's the time for it. But what I will say is I did make it very clear to people. I said, I'm going to sit here and enjoy trying to watch Xbox make this make sense because I know they can't. And I did not expect to be this fucking right to the point where minutes after that show ended, walk back. It's a totally different story. This is unacceptable. It is. There's a difference between the rep of like, look, you guys are transparent. Sometimes you get overexcited. You speak a little too much. A couple years down the line, it bites you in the ass. There's a difference between that, like maybe you said something during the Xbox Bethesda roundtable that's not really clear as part of the plan today. There's those types of moments. And then there's this. There's something like this, which I think is like an egregious level of vague, non-committal statements when your platform needed it most. If you were a definitive, we'll see, and that was it, that'd be fine. But you can't go, no, these games are not Starfield and Indie, and then immediately say, hey, we're not going to rule that out. We're not going to rule out some of the biggest games coming to the platform. You just can't do that. It brings us right back to a level of confusion that's extremely frustrating. I think people are more than willing to understand the Xbox stride. If there's anything I walked away from this with, it was like, okay, I see the vision. I understand the vision. I know what you guys want. I know how you want to get there. Okay. But you're dancing around so many of the key talking points or walking back on them quickly because I feel like what doesn't make sense to me is this. The 4 games going over there are these kind of experimental titles, Hi-Fi Rush, Pentiment, Grounded, and Sea of Thieves. These are successful games in their own ways. But when you look at like the investment and what you get out of them, I can see how they're testers. But what the logic doesn't add up to me when it's like, wouldn't you want to have the biggest parts of your business that you spend the most on taking advantage of those other platforms, just using the same logic and reasoning that you use to justify these for? Like, why wouldn't a Starfield go over, right? Like, why wouldn't it go over? Because by the logic of Pentiment, which needs to explore the boundaries and see more sales to justify more investment, why wouldn't Starfield go over where if you're a bean counter at Microsoft who's clearly helping make these decisions and you look at like, okay, we got right now the numbers, 13 million users of Starfield on Game Pass, PC, Xbox. Like, okay, this is pretty... Wait, they sold 50 plus million PlayStation 5s already? We only got 20 plus million here. Get that over there, right? Like, I look at... That's how I read it. I'm like, there is no, because you have opened this door, there is no logical reasoning to me, business-wise, on why you should hold these games back, right? And I'm not advocating for it, but I'm not following how the logic applies for one group of games, but not your most expensive games. How does Starfield being in development for so long and how much money and marketing you put in it, how does that evade this outside of the optics? Which I think is clearly what it is. And I see it for what it is, right? But I just feel it's an inevitability based on what door they've opened today. I think because of how vague they were, there's still going to be some question marks around games. Much more to say, but that's kind of where I stand on the exclusivity aspect of it. I think they kind of hurt themselves in this. So what do you think? I've certainly gone on for a while.
No, I mean, I think your overall point is right, which is, basically the Verge article, kind of softly, I think softly, it does contradict about the Starfield and the Indiana Jones thing because it's not giving that definitive explanation point on, no, it's not happening, right? It's still, I don't want to say right now for sure. It leaves the door open. That's the thing. And I think that is deserved frustration, you know what I'm saying, that people can have, that is just like, okay, why won't you commit to that? To your other question is reference to, it makes more business sense to put, the bigger games, right? And to get that, I think there's truth to that. I think what this shows me is that there is still an internal conflict, because any business person would say, get the big stuff over there, right? So the fact that it's a Pentiment, that it's a Hi-Fi Rush, right? To me, it really signifies that the people who are maybe fighting to slow this strategy down are telling this other group, how about we attack things that have been a internal failure? That's how I look at it. I look at it that you look at Hi-Fi Rush and you like, nobody bought that on the Xbox platform. You look at Pentiment and you say, no one bought that on the Xbox platform. We need to get more out of these titles. And maybe this is the new pitch. We both agree Sea of Thieves and Grounded makes perfect sense. I've always been team live service needs to be everywhere if you truly want to grow live service. I mean, Bungie themselves are doing that with PlayStation in their games. That makes sense. So I get it with Sea of Thieves. I get it with Grounded. I love to see more people playing Grounded. I think that game's phenomenal, completely underrated. I don't like survival games. I think the game's awesome. I'm Team Obsidian, BlackRock, salute. But I do think it was one of the games that I thought they may have would have stumbled on, and it ended up being something that I was pleasantly surprised. So I'm for that. But when I see Pentiment and I see Hi-Fi Rush, that signals to me you are not happy with what those titles should be. And then they made it a key verbiage. I don't know if you caught it. It was kind of like this experiment to see how people receive it, and then also help fund a potential sequel on our platform and see if that gauges interest. So there is part of this is an experiment to see, are people going to PlayStation really going to buy this and Switch? Are they going to buy these games? If they do we now create interest that when we come out with Pentiment 2, Hi-Fi Rush 2, we know Hi-Fi Rush 2 is definitely coming, right?
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? So does that now make the Xbox platform more attractive because now PlayStation and Switch owners know about it? These are questions that I do think that part's legitimate as far as them they almost use it like an experimental. We need to know. They was like, we don't know what's going to happen. I do believe there's some truth to that. But to your point, it is weird why these four versus not the other four. Why the way it was communicated, I feel is weird. And they have expanding to do because the question's going to remain. You say four now. Right, but what else is going to determine more stuff open, especially if the strategy proves successful,
right? And they have a whole section that's timestamped called "Why This Isn't a Change in Strategy," and they say that people are going to play Xbox wherever they want. Xbox Play Anywhere is tech that they'd love to see other platforms explore. Actually, one thing that Phil Spencer said to Game Files, Stephen Totillo, was that he'd like to see Nintendo and Sony bring games to Xbox, but he doesn't expect them to. And he also mentioned here that it wasn't a bartering deal, like they're going to bring games over because they brought games to them. But I think one of the key quotes here to me was the devices people want to play on should be in service of making games as big as possible. And I think a lot of this is about the games industry regulating a bit. And I don't know, this is where I can't say for certain if Xbox is kind of clairvoyant or not, because this could be a play that's really smart for them. And I'm not going to, as frustrated as I am by communication and confusion around the platform, I have to be reasonable in that with what they presented, while I think in that actual podcast, the stats and the facts weren't there. When you look at the surrounding layoffs, you look at the big picture and how many people are losing their jobs in gaming. You look at the bloating budgets that we've seen in like the Insomniac hack. Like you see these bits of information that they're clearly playing off of, but not so directly. When I connect those dots and I think about the economics of the industry, I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, are we in an industry right now where you could say, okay, Hi-Fi Rush did this, as a sequel, we need to do this, so we need to pour this much into it, and how do you justify that in a day and age with today's work rates where you should probably just go and make something that's going to do gangbusters for you? Like it's tough to justify a Pentiment, which is why we celebrate it so much, because it's like, this is so cool that this is in the first party portfolio. So I get the business sense here and how this can lead to more sustainability moving forward. But I think at that point it's about trust, which is to me at least not fully there. Like I heard stuff that I think if I was in a different position, and that's why I think some people were really positive on this show and some were really negative on it, because for me as someone who doesn't have a lot of trust right now, in Xbox and their communication and their commitment to not the brand itself. I think that was made pretty clear. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but like their commitment to things that they've said and sticking to that all the way through, because that's wavered. Seeing things like, yeah, we had some layoffs of our own, but look, we're not alone. I'm like, that sounds way too defensive. Like that doesn't inspire some type of like, oh, I get it. You laid those people off. So, you know, you can make these games. Oh, okay. Like, yeah, now the business is regulated. It's like layoffs happen all the fucking time. And I'm not saying that to poo-poo it, but like happen all the time. So like, how are you going to make that right? Especially when you had 2,000 layoffs. It's like, okay, you're reorienting the games business. And effectively what they said without directly saying it is like, by nature of what we've absorbed, like we need PlayStation, we need
that's what Nintendo. I got from it too.
Right. Like we need these two who have audiences who are buying games in a large amount. And one thing Sarah said also was that the Xbox players have reached their peak player count. PC has reached its highest player count. I'm like, okay, so they're feeling like they've hit a wall here because the consoles aren't selling. Game Pass is moving, but I think they said 34 million subscribers.
Said the number too. I was shocked. I was like, wow.
That's including Game Pass Core. I think that's a little soft. I'm not going to lie.
I think that's a little soft too.
It's a little soft for sure. So I look at it. We'll talk about all of this in a little bit. I'm sorry. I'm just leaping around a little bit because there's so much information that pulls it together here. But you're looking at generally where they stand as a brand. Like, okay, to put it simply, Game Pass growth, slow. Hardware growth, really non-existent. We're making fucking good games. I think Xbox has had a lot of great games outside like Redfall. And we're not getting ROI pretty much. How do we do that? And that's why I go back to the top. I'm like, how do you justify just these four? It's like, you got to, if these other ones, which are great games, aren't doing well, and like, you got to start bringing them over. Go ahead.
This what it was. You're on fire and you're right. But we also have to understand, I think this is part of the internal battle, which is that there's the financial side, and then there's the human element that knows the gaming industry. And that if you rip that off, even though we want the rip off, because we're mature and we understand why you're going to do what you're going to do, we are dealing with the emotionality of a fan base that is really willing to burn people at the stakes. So I think that's part here. And I think that thinking is why the games that were chosen as opposed to, look, I'm just going to say it. I'm not going to sit here and throw every leaker or person who put out information prior to this business update. The sourcing that we were hearing, right, that these bigger games were being considered, I believe there's some truth to that. Despite what Xbox is saying. Like, I believe there's some truth to that. Like, they were saying they were considered, right? So to me, this is trying to snuff that out, right? And bring confidence back to a base that you're not going to have, your digital library is not going to go anywhere. We're not going out of the hallway. But I get that. But I think that there is the human element of trying to speak to a base that is literally panicking on eggshells. What is happening with this brand? And to your point, it may eventually go to what you're saying. Right? It may eventually go to these bigger games. It may very well be. But if it is, someone in the building is trying to fight for this slower, streamlined approach. You know what I'm saying? Then to do the whole Band-Aid thing, which I'm with you. I'm like, rip it off. I've spoken to people internally.
You make a good point.
Yeah. I've spoken to people like, what you think? People in that building have asked me what I think. I'm just going to tell you straight up. Like, there's a reason why it took a while to do the thing. Because I said, look, y'all want the real. I'm going to tell y'all, like, part of me just say, just rip it off. Like, why are we doing this? But there is the other part of me that says, okay, I want this, but the emotionality of this base, and they know the temperature room might not be able to handle that. And that's why we are where we are now. But we'll see. We'll see if it's the right approach. I don't know. I cannot predict what's going to happen here.
Yeah, because where I was kind of leading with the clairvoyance of Xbox was like, Phil said growth is critical to the long-term success of Xbox, and that he said, I've been here for 20 years and I want to make sure Xbox can go like another 20 years.
Right.
I just feel like there was a lot of kind of damning like survivability surrounding this show. Like, not the Xbox One level. We're about to go extinct, y'all. We got to do something drastic here. This is more like, hey, we're halfway through the generation. We're looking at the numbers. They're not adding up. We've got to make another move here. And in that sense, I get it. Like I said, I understand it. they really framed it as almost this pitch, I felt, to developers to come make games for their platform. I think it's why like the indie scene is blowing up for Xbox, because what they're saying effectively is like, let me find the quote here. Sarah talked a bit about hardware, and she said it serves as a target for developers that thanks to Game Pass, Cloud, and PC, they can expand to those other places. So the idea in making a game for Xbox is that because they're connected to your phone and your computer and a console and a smart TV app, and these other devices like the ROG Ally and maybe more enthusiast devices, the Logitech gaming handheld, when you have these all in the tuck and you're making a game for their platform, you're not just making it for like, oh, the install base of 20 million consoles. You're like, no, you're making it for like potentially 100 million people out there. And so that's where I said, again, I get the business sense. I see the vision a little more clearly now on where they want to be. Because I think if they were pretty direct on anything, while they kind of remained reserved on the exclusivity factor and how certain games and their fate will end up, I think they were pretty clear on what they need to do to ensure this brand grows, which is like bring games everywhere over time. And that's in an effort to sustain. They used Pal World as an example. They said like, look, Pocket Pair, we let them do game preview and Game Pass, and we let them launch on Steam, and look, it's the biggest game of the year. Like, we want to do more of that. So yeah, it was a lot about keeping them as a business afloat. And I think it just indicates that there's been a lot of failures that maybe we misread via player count and whatnot, which that's the egg on the face I'll 100% take, because there was a lot of, we don't know what those failures are, if they truly were failures, but like when you see them saying like, oh, Hi-Fi Rush smashed every conceivable metric, but then they need to go to another platform to gauge
good point.
A sequel.
Good point.
Someone wasn't telling the truth somewhere on the line.
Let's just call it what it is. I believe it was.
Yeah, it was Greenberg. Yeah, it was
Greenberg, and Greenberg refuted the Grubb statement, because at the time it was Grubb said, it wasn't as sustainable. They weren't happy with the numbers, I believe, was the table. And then I think Greeny came out with a statement and said, no, we are happy. So to your point, where we are now leads me to believe that the former, was true. So yeah, I think you made a fantastic point about, I sensed the levels of sustainability and survivability. And again, what I said on the crossover for me was this about survivability or was this about greed? I did get survivability. I did get hints of, if we want to be here for 10 to 20 years, when you hear those comments from Phil, when you hear about, if we want to commit to hardware, we want to do these other things, this is kind of like the necessary step. I do want to say one thing though that I thought was actually important in the Xbox Wire post. I don't know if you saw that, which is what it means to be Xbox. And it was kind of like 5 tenets. I don't know if you saw that. First one, I'll just reiterate real quick. The biggest games in the world will be on Xbox. Okay, fine. Maybe you're still acquiring. You're still okay, fine. Our games will come to Game Pass day one. I thought that was key, because I have to admit, I came in here thinking there may be some serious structural changes to Game Pass that might happen, whether it be day and date, tier structure. I know pricing they couldn't do because of FTC most likely. So I thought number 2 is interesting. 3, a robust and innovative multi-year hardware roadmap. That is something that I think was important to answer. Are you going to get out of the hardware business? That is important. 4, compatibility with your library is a priority. I mean, that's a given. We know what their features are, cross-play, cross-save. I always firmly believe that's the future. And then the last thing is Xbox. Here's the key. Xbox will continue to help game creators find the biggest audience possible. And the game creators part is kind of interesting. I'm curious how you feel about that. Like, I didn't know what to make of this game creators thing. I didn't know what that really meant to me. Like, what do you get from that? Let
me see. Where was it? Do you mind linking it to me?
It's the Xbox Wire post in reference to it. I got you right now. And,
sorry.
No, you good. Because there's so many. Look, bro, you caught the Steven Titilla. I missed that joint. It's so many.
It all
things
came out at once. It's got to be intentional, obviously, the way they tried to just scatter the information. Let's see here. I'm starting to read the situation like you.
Yeah, it's just so much. But so if you scroll to the bottom of that post, they have this like what I call the 5 tenets, what it means to be Xbox. You know what I'm saying, kind of thing. So I'm just curious, as a fellow, as a big time Mr. Matty Plays content creator, fellow game. What does Xbox will continue to help game creators find the biggest audience possible mean to you?
I think it means that, okay, so from a business side, like if you're Xbox and you're looking at a game, I would imagine like they've already told someone like ID at Xbox, like, hey, we don't really need to pay for exclusivity, so to say. Like, bring them into the platform and kind of sell them on cloud and sell them on Game Pass. Like, that's where the deals are probably made, not like exclusivity, but getting them to the biggest audience possible will be through those things, right? Cloud, PC, Game Pass. Go ahead.
Quick follow up. Does that also mean this is me, could be spitballing? Maddie has a game, right? I'm coming over to Xbox, right? They're ready to do the deal with you now, right? Just theoretically, we're throwing it out there. We're speaking it into existence. If we're going to help game creators, such as Mr. Maddie Plays, and we know that our Xbox platform, what is it, 30, what was it, 30, what was the number of Game Pass subscribers? 30, what was it?
34 million.
34, right? And then we know about it was about 20 something consoles in comparison to 20 million something consoles in comparison to PlayStation. So does that also mean that with this new approach that we can help you get to other platforms? Like the biggest audience possible also could suggest other platforms, or am I reading too much into that?
Yeah, no, it's very, I guess if Sega still had a console, it would be almost kind of like that, right? Like, hey, we're going to make this thing, but we're going to bring it everywhere. So, I mean, that is a winning strategy. If like you're a developer, what they said is not wrong at all. Like you spend so many years working on this thing. Like I want everyone to play my game, as many people as possible. But I think there's a benefit to being exclusive. There's like a meaningful component to it. There's a hype component to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's that staggered release component to it. Like you don't just get one shot, like you do exclusive and then you go multi-plat and then you do like a definitive edition. Like there's tiers to it.
Okay.
But if Xbox is kind of selling developers on the idea of like, hey, you come to us and you'll get everywhere instead of doing it yourself. Like you can come through the platform holder, do Game Pass, do cloud, do the consoles, do PC, and you'll get everywhere. Pretty tantalizing offer, in my opinion, if that's really what they're getting at here.
And then maybe bag 3 and 4 on said other platforms a year later. I mean, if we look at, listen, we had Joshua in the realm of the Dukes.
We did.
That was, let's be all intents and purposes, a passion project that he kind of sprung on them. He admitted it in the realm of the Dukes that wasn't really part of the initial plan. And then he's like, look, I may never get this game. This is something I want to do between a big game. And thus it was out there. And I don't know, it's just interesting that Pentiment is part of it, because I was thinking about him and a smaller game and trying to reach a bigger audience. I just thought it was very, very interesting. And maybe they're not happy with internally the sales that may have done, and they felt it needs to go. And we all felt it was a great game. It just needed people to buy it and pick it up, check it out.
My question for you in turn,
let's go,
is, okay, so we see the vision a little bit more, right? Like we see the business sensibility, even if as like there's a difference, right? I need to make it clear for the audience. Like there's a difference between like we see the business sense and then like the respect of the player.
Mm-hmm.
So we're hearing what's good for them.
Yes.
My question is, how much is enough, right? Like, do you inevitably hit a wall anyway, right? Like right now we're seeking growth. And I think Phil's exact words are something along the lines of like, all these corporations that make games are always seeking new ways to grow. Effectively saying, hey, we appease shareholders and we need to fucking get bigger every step of the way. How are we going to do that next? Simply put, how much is enough? And by that, I mean, eventually you're going to be everywhere. And is that where it stops, right? Or like, what's the next step from there, right? Like let's say in today's world, you're at Xbox and you put your game on Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, PC, MetaQuest, you put it on smart TV apps, Game Pass, you put it on handhelds, it's everywhere. Is that it? Is that the end game there? At like what point? I'm not trying to straw man, I'm not trying to devil's advocate too hard here. It's more so I'm just asking because you propose the idea of like greed and sustainability. And that's the question I've kind of wrapped my head around a ton here or really rattled my head around, I should say, is how much is enough? Like when, and I know they're corporations and you need that money, they want that money, but like, how much is enough? Do you have an answer off the top of your head for that?
Yeah, I do. I think that they literally outright said that they low key envision a ubiquitous future where other platform holders at some point may put their games elsewhere, even though right now it's them. So to me, this is them with the clairvoyance, them trying to see where the industry is going. They think this is going to happen, right? So for me, how I look at it is that they feel that, one, they're best equipped to do it. Two, that this will involve some of their older titles, right? And if they see success, they will push it there. But I listen, they're flirting this line, which is, how can I say, Sega Plus, which is we're not Sega because we're not all the way going out of the hardware business. We are still going to have hardware because we need that. But they literally said we want to be the biggest games in the world. We want the most people to play these games. That literally is third-party publishing in a way, right? So you're in this unique area where you want to be a third-party publisher in a way, but you still want to make hardware. And they are trying to skirt this line. And the data is going to show whether or not that is something that they can accomplish and whether or not it's sustainable. And they even worry about the brand damage. It's this weird flirting both sides of it.
Yeah.
And I don't know how this is going to work out for them. You know, my main concern is, again, that's why with the Band-Aid analogy, if you're going to do it, do it. If not, I am outside of live service, I am truly curious how much people are going to buy these on these other platforms. That I literally need to see that data. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's like, yo, Carl, people are buying it. Maybe Switch 2 comes out and people are like, yo, Hi-Fi Rush is a Switch 2 launch game. This is massive. Look how much we're doing. Maybe Cog's wrong there. But, you know, there's a part of me that's like, are PlayStation guys really going to rush out to Pentiment and and a Hi-Fi Rush? I don't know. That's my question.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's just, that's the thing is what I was getting at the beginning of all this is just left us with a lot of question marks. I think when you make a podcast that's 20 minutes long, I know you said you wish it wasn't a blog post, and I agree, like 2020 hindsight, I guess, but I wish they sat a little longer and just I know they didn't want to do it, but I wish they sat a little longer and just explained a little bit. I feel you. Let's talk a bit about Game Pass.
Let's get to it.
We've sat on exclusivity for a ton. Naturally, that's at the center of all of this, but there's a section that was called First Party and Game Pass in this podcast. And some of the major talking points here were that the platform used to be the biggest thing, as Matt Booty said, but now games can be bigger than any one platform. He used Roblox as an example, which I thought was interesting. Not even like Minecraft, which I think is like their own thing. But nonetheless, all first-party games will be on Xbox. He mentioned like 3 pillars when he said this. All first-party games will be on Xbox. Number 2 is all first-party games will be Game Pass day one. And number 3 was, we know Game Pass will only be available on Xbox. He said those are like the 3 cores for first-party moving forward. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. He said they're going to continue to look at bringing more games to more players. They have a cross-save, cross-play focus that I'm really excited to get your thoughts on, because I thought of you right away with that. In fact, Matt Booty actually said, like, a direct quote here was so fundamental to what we're doing when it came to that. At the same time, Sarah stepped in and announced that Activision Blizzard games are coming to Game Pass, starting with Diablo 4 on March 28th. You called this in our Last Stand staff server. You said that there's going to be a little soften the blow announcement, like, look, we got you.
Hey, guys.
Yep. Yep. And so with that, I really, the biggest thing that captured me here was the 3 pillars for Xbox's first party moving forward, which if you listen to the words here, all first party games will be on Xbox. Just that will be on Xbox. Mm-hmm. All first party games will be day one Game Pass. And that we know Game Pass will only be available on Xbox. Now, one thing that I thought of was a theory I had. I don't know if it was last episode or the episode before, but this says to me that they see Game Pass as the future platform. Like, there's a limit to the hardware. There's a limit to the buy-in, because this is a company hampered by poor hardware sales right now. And so the platform that is bigger than the hardware is Game Pass.
Game Pass. You're right. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
And so I look at that and I think, okay, all first party games will be on Xbox. That you can say exclusively, just they're going to be there. But the value is in Game Pass. And something I've said before with really starting with Outriders was that Outriders wasn't really an exciting game to many. I thought when I previewed it, it was great, but wasn't really an exciting game to many until that announcement of day one Game Pass, and then Xbox fans were on it. Like that was their game. And I said that felt like at that time you could feel a shift to, it's not really about console exclusivity. The hype and the excitement and the investment is driven less by the individuality of a product and more about its value to you and how much money you're spending on it. And when you're, then that's what defines the service to this day. So the main sticking point value wise for Xbox gamers is that Game Pass day one remains, not exclusivity, which Matt Booty didn't really firm up here. Mm-hmm. And that the main place you're going to find Game Pass, though, is on the Xbox platform, which would fuel some of the rumors that we'll discuss in the hardware, where it seems like I'm getting this feeling like Xbox is about to go all over the place with hardware. Like we've heard about Keystone, right? This kind of dongle. We've heard about the handheld. We've heard about the 2 SKU approach. Now we're hearing from Sarah Bond, this next generation console, most powerful leap we've seen. We'll talk about the reusage of that that wordplay in a little bit, I'm sure. But it sounds like a lot's cooking. We had the FTC leak, so the digital only Series X. We have the controller that awakens when you lift. And I know that's not necessarily hardware in the terms of console, but that may be the hardware moving forward when it's just an app. So I see that they're trying to create all these different places to play to appeal to different play styles. And if Game Pass is the host of that, that's what they're banking in on. So what do you make of what they have said of Game Pass here? Do you think that's where the value truly lies now for Xbox gamers heading into the future, where let's say we do go full multi-plat? Does Xbox have the leg up in saying, well, yeah, like everyone's games are everywhere, but like ours is built in the subscription service and you get it day one right here?
I think that was key. Listen, I can only speak for myself. When all the rumors were going down and, sky was falling for a lot of people, and that's fine. I get it. The sourcing seemed legitimate. For me, it always came down to, okay, why am I on this platform, right? One, I like the ecosystem. I've had my library, the back and pat stuff and all that stuff. It's great. But for me, Game Pass is extremely attractive. Game Pass allows me to try games I might not have ever tried because, let's be honest, these games are expensive and the time commitment, right? We could only play so many amount of games at a certain amount of time. So Game Pass is a huge reason for me to be on the platform. I was coming into this willing to sacrifice. You know what, Cog? They may not be sustainable. Day and date might be going. I was ready to accept that pill. Like I was just like, look,
I wasn't, honestly.
I feel you. And a lot of people wasn't too. A lot of people like, nah, they got it. And part of me was like, well, maybe the math ain't mathing, right? And maybe they gotta do something. So to see the two things that were key for me, I can just speak for myself, was like you said, Game Pass, being Xbox, all first party games come in and they're going to be there. Game Pass, day and date remaining big, but the key for me, surprisingly, Activision Blizzard didn't see that level of commitment. I thought they may come in and say, "Hey guys, in order for this to work, ABK has to be all multiply, and maybe the Call of Duties and we gotta refrain from the Game Pass day and date with them because these games are so big. These need to be everywhere, and we can't. You know what I mean? I was ready to hear that. So to me, I get from this that Call of Duty is the Game Pass. The Xbox Wire post says with the first game, and I'm gonna quote it because this is what they said. They were like, the first game that's going to be in the service. There'll be more to play as we fulfill our commitment to Activision and Blizzard games with Game Pass, both new releases and classic games from its catalog. We're happy to share that Diablo 4 will be able to be played by 34 million Game Pass subscribers on both Xbox and PC March 28th. Now, here's the key sentence. This is only the start of Xbox players being able to enjoy Activision and Blizzard games on Game Pass. The start, meaning that more are coming, and we know what the big kahuna is after that. That to me is huge because that to me is all I wanted. See that vision through of what you acquired, and then let's reassess. I think a lot of the Xbox community, the reason why the rage was so high about the rumors was that people were like, bro, you just acquired ABK, right? Why completely go multiple? Because remember, people thought this was a complete multi-plat strategy, not just 4 games, everything, the whole slate, the kit and caboodle, everything's coming, right? So part of people's relief today was like, oh, okay, just these 4 for now, even though it's a for now, it's a big asterisk for now. We ain't gonna minimize that for now. I ain't stupid. But this is what I'm telling you. A lot of people that do feel relief say, okay, I ain't losing Game Pass day and date. Okay, ABK. Okay, cool. And for them to say ABK is a huge deal. Now, notice what wasn't said, though. What's up with Bethesda? What's up with ZeniMax? What's up with that? What's up with y'all? What's up? Because I feel there's still questions there. If you can't commit to Starfield, you can't commit to ZeniMax just yet. You know what I'm saying? Now you're committing a little bit to Starfield, committing a little bit to Indiana Jones for now. That's cool. But I got to look at my beautiful friends at Bethesda. I have to feel internally that your plans may be changing based on case by case. I get case by case energy for them because Phil does not want to commit and say nothing from ZeniMax, you know what I'm saying, is coming over or will be multi-plat. So, and listen, Hi-Fi Rush on the list.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see. I mean, you know, I get the frustration on both sides here, but I will say, for me, I was happy that ABK, not from a selfish reason, oh, I just nobody should play my games and all that. More from this adds tremendous value if you're going to pick up the Xbox platform. You're going to get Diablo, Call of Duty in game. That is huge. And
they actually do it. That's the thing, is like, that's where, like, my lack of trust doesn't.
Absolutely. That's fair.
Like playing
that's
maybe
fair.
too big of a factor. I don't want it to steer the conversation, but it's like, I mean, Diablo, yeah, absolutely. But Call of Duty, like, do you really think
as we
it'd be great if they did
fulfill our commitment to offer Activision and Blizzard games with Game Pass, fulfill the commitment? I read that. That's all.
Matt did say all first-party games are going to be day one in Game Pass, and that's great. That's huge.
To me, that is all I wanted, selfishly as a gamer. See the vision through. Let's see what Game Pass does when ABK is in it. That's all I wanted to see. I thought they were abandoning this. And that was disappointing to me because people say, yo, you just got to the mountaintop. You just got all these studios. Can we at least see it through for a year or two? So there's a part of me, maybe I'm reaching, that felt that team that was on the screen today was able to repel a little bit of the major stuff to get us to the 4 and to get us to that and to give investors time to say, okay, well, what about this? This is back to what's homie's, the first guy, James. That's why I still think there's truth to that. Because if the 4 don't do well and then ABK does well, there's it was just an experiment, y'all. We looked at the numbers and we don't feel that the need to go forward all the way with everything. That's just maybe a year later with a couple of things. It's they can spin this so many ways. You know what I'm saying? It's interesting to me. But again, you seem like you got thoughts.
Yeah. We have a write-in here from Logan from MMRYCRD, who writes, "Hello, Dukes. Matt Booty in the Business Update podcast said Game Pass will only be available on Xbox. Seems like a very definitive statement, and I'm curious how you guys take it. Excited to hear what you have to say. Thank you for writing in, Logan." This was a standout one for me, Cog, that I wanted to point some attention to because it shows how much things have shifted for us optically, maybe even business-wise. The understanding was like, hey, if these games, I'm sure if you could find a podcast of us like a year or two ago, maybe saying, yeah, if these games are going to come out on Nintendo or on PlayStation, it's going to be a curated Game Pass app. I'm very interested in what they saw that made them say, if Xbox is a play anywhere kind of device, why would your driver to that in Game Pass be limited to just Xbox, as in not PlayStation and Switch, right? Is how I'm getting it. So what do you think about that, Cog? Because that, to me, when they say only on Xbox or not, where Xbox exists, which could include then PlayStation, that could include Nintendo, given these games are coming over there. What do you think this says about Game Pass moving forward? Because I always thought, hey, this is a pretty big part of the strategy, right? Like breaking the barriers of millions of players that you can reach who are like hardcore gamers and can get invested there. Maybe they don't think there's gains there because the consoles are limited. I don't know, but I'm very curious to get your thoughts on this very definitive statement about Game Pass only being on Xbox.
Great question. I think they still want it. I just think Nintendo and PlayStation ain't having it.
Yeah.
I don't think Nintendo and PlayStation, like Nintendo has been on record. Remember when they tried to create some discord during the FTC leaks about, Phil's comments on Nintendo, and Nintendo was like, look, we don't really, we don't really see that vision for us, as far as acquisition, as far as, Game Pass. I think the major platform holders do not want that on their server at this time. So this is also the approach that I think it goes back to our multi-platform approach, right? Okay, you don't want the Game Pass stuff. Cool. Select titles that we think could work on your platform. We want to present this to you. And it takes two to tango, right? So I think that this is the new strat.
So you view it as like okay, we can't afford to wait until they decide to bend the knee, so we're going to do a la carte instead.
We got to. We need this money. We got to get this ROI, and Game Pass, let's be honest, those numbers, we got to be honest, those numbers are soft. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to dance around it. I'm shocked that it's only that, right? And
we have a write-in, actually, if you want to go in.
Yes, please, go for it. Good time.
All right, we have Syed who writes in, hey, Dukes. The team announced that Game Pass is at 34 million users. While that sounds substantial on paper, it apparently includes the new Xbox Game Pass core members, formerly Xbox Live Gold. Under that context, isn't 34 million quite low? Does that change your opinion on Starfield's success? Starfield was meant to be the game that pushed Xbox consoles and Xbox Game Pass, and it seems to have failed on both counts. Does that also mean that Game Pass growth as a whole has stagnated? Curious to hear what you two think. So, Cog, please continue.
Yeah, no, great point. I think that they are definitely softer numbers. I think that they keep reiterating that the console market space almost is at that expansion. Like they're talking about they're doubling PC. But they're not talking about the growth. They've actually talked about the console growth. They don't expect it when they talked about Game Pass numbers, maybe recently from Phil. I can't believe like maybe a couple months ago. That they haven't seen much growth there. They tend to see their most growth in PC. So, yeah, as far as the Starfield situation, I think it's a success on PC. I think it's a success with the Steam numbers and stuff like that. But ultimately, to his point, I don't think it translated to these huge Game Pass subscription numbers. You know what I'm saying? I have to be honest there. I think they got more sales than probably maybe what it translated to the Game Pass thing. So I do think, I'm not going to sit there and say Game Pass is a failure. I'm not going to say that. You got 34, you got more than you got consoles, right? So my thing is, this is why I don't want to name people, but this is why the people in the building, right, who are opposed or concerned about the Game Pass strategy may have mandated we need to start looking into putting some of these games on other platforms. Now, it's up to y'all to determine how y'all going to disseminate this and what that list is going to be. But you need to get me a list at 5 o'clock, sir. Because we see these numbers. And I just got to be real. You listen, I'm never one to say, hey, COG wasn't wrong or whatever. Listen, I can take any bit of information. I have to look at what's presented. What's presented to me is you have a shift in strategy. Why did you come to this? Because you clearly see something right now, something that happened during this 2 years of ABK, of waiting and litigation, that now you are clearly pivoting. This is a pivot. We can't sugarcoat this. So that's fine. Now help me make sense of it. What's making sense to me is you got to put these games other places. You got to see revenue. And that sounds like what's happening here. If again, I'm guessing, I don't have all the numbers. I think he did talk about, Tom Warren challenged Phil on why they're not disclosing certain numbers and things like that. And Phil had kind of statement towards that. But again, this all predicates and shows me why this is happening. This is going towards this new shift in philosophy to get this ROI now. And yeah, I think that's what it is. So I think that's a fair question from Saeed as far as the numbers. And I think this is all part of sustainability. And again, if it's about sustainability, COG is about it. I don't want them to go away. I don't want them to die just for my ego to say, yo, I told you it was sustainable. Live the fight another day. I want you around. I don't want you to be TurboGrafx 16. I don't want you to be Dreamcast. Like, I want you to exist. If this keeps you in existence, then I'm all for it.
So, yeah, when it comes to the Game Pass subscribers. I agree. It's super soft. And I think what's interesting in speaking to the soft growth is particularly if Starfield was the biggest like first party launch with Game Pass and it drove the single most subscriptions in a day, then how many were you really growing over time if that was your biggest and you're only at 34 million?
What were you before?
Yeah. And the key point that you said is that you've got more Game Pass subs now than Xbox consoles, which I think is why they're leaning more into driving value there, where games are everywhere and it's about what's being added day one that creates the excitement and the hype and the value and the subscribers rather than exclusivity. I know Phil said in 5 to 10 years he sees it not, exclusivity not being a big part of the pie. And I can see where he's coming from with that, but I think a lot of that's largely due to his own doing, like with his own platform.
Yeah,
like
their situation that they're in.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say,
Yeah.
PlayStation, I could see bending the knee as they're seeing benefits with PC. I don't know if Nintendo really needs to do shit, man. Like, I'm going to be honest. They are fine. They are fine. If they have another Switch success, they are fine. Only if they have another Wii U situation could they possibly have to take a look and go, all right, what can we bring over? But even then, they have such a legendary backlog that they could just bring over some old thing to current hardware, and that's it. That's all they have to do. They don't have to bring new stuff over. They're in a perfectly fine position. But I agree, Side, that that the numbers are soft and that does it change my opinion in Starfield success? Yeah, it definitely shifts it for sure. You can't stare these numbers and this situation in the face and act like things are fine and things are the same and what we believed beforehand is what it is now. It's clearly not. And like I said earlier, that's the egg on the face I'm more than willing to take because, we want to make this show as accurate as possible. But yeah, it was definitely a game that was designed to push Xbox to a new level, Game Pass to a new level. It seems to have accomplished something, but as we did say fairly, Starfield, the Xbox's brand should not have solely ever rested on one single game, including Starfield. And whether that's on the community for hyping it up, people will blame us because we talked about Starfield a ton, whatever that may be. The reality is Xbox needed more than Starfield to keep this going. And I think the problem is for most of this generation, you had the launch year with nothing. You had 2022 with borderline nothing. You had the first 8 months of 2021 with nothing. So this is also a product, I think, less of Starfield, which I know people are going to think I'm making excuses for, and more a product of not doing what they did last year. Last year, I think they would be in a much different situation if last year in 2023, where you had quarterly beats, if you had that for the first couple of years of your console generation, might be a little bit of a different story here today. But because they weren't prepared and because their teams were a mess, this is what we end up with, and they have to change their strategy moving forward. So, yeah, Game Pass is definitely the one to keep an eye on, and we'll see where it goes.
I just want to be clear on one thing. Like I said, again, I'm talking about Starfield in relationship to Game Pass success. Like, I think there's truth to that. I as far as not what they envision, right? Yeah. But as far as retail success, as far as Steam success, that was successful. But to your point, the rest of the titles, in my opinion, if Starfield was like the claim to fame, so to speak, then to me that does speak to the other titles as well as the type of years that they've been having, that the rest are not really drawing the Game Pass subscribers, whether it be the Forza Motorsport in 2023, the other, like they're not getting the massive growth that they thought they would be getting at this point, is what I'm kind of getting at it. You know what I'm saying? But I don't want to sit there and put this narrative. I was going to be like, people go, oh, he's defending Starfield again. I don't want to put this narrative that this game is a failure. I am putting the narrative that as far as Game Pass success, it did not drive Game Pass success maybe the way they would have wanted. I will give you that.
Yeah, Starfield definitely, I think, did pretty well sales-wise. I mean, it was a top 10 selling game last year, so we don't know if it made its money back, but it definitely sold well.
That's all I was going to say. I was going to bring up the MPD numbers and for the year-to-date numbers, because that is important. Sure. I mean, we can't minimize that.
Sure. Let's talk a bit about hardware, right? That's another big part of it that I think had, at least in my case, I had way less worries about where hardware was going to end up with Xbox. I just felt like there was too much. Number one, the reports leading into the business event were all suggesting that Xbox had recommitted internally to some sort of hardware strategy. And so that was good to see. But with the FTC leak and with so many like trademarks going on, and they have a whole department dedicated to this, and they didn't seem to be a target during the layoffs, which I think was like the biggest telling point of like a shift in strategy, a shift in focus. I didn't feel super worried about where they were going with hardware, but nonetheless, they talked about how they are committing to hardware still. They said there are more announcements to come this holiday when it comes to hardware. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. And that they're invested in the next generation roadmap with, according to Sarah Bond, quote, them being determined to deliver the biggest leap in a hardware generation ever, end quote. I think with hardware, we can also talk about this a bit because they kind of go hand in hand. Game library and preservation. So they talked a bit about back compat. I think shut down the notion of back compat coming back in any form at all. They're like, it's tougher on consoles. And it just seemed like Phil was saying, hey, it's really tough to do on consoles. Like pretty much this game and last generation's games, like they're going to carry forward with you. But like if we're talking 360, Xbox One, or sorry, original, I should say, I didn't get the notion here that those are coming back in any way, although it would be great if they did. Right. And there was really no word on when he talked about preservation. He's like, it's really important to us. And then talked about digital library, saves, cross save, that sort of like multiple entitlements. No word on physical games though, which does not surprise me because there's been so many signs globally that Xbox is pivoting away from this gently. And I think this goes hand in hand with one of those, let's not move too hard or aggressively away from this, kind of like with the exclusivity thing. Like, let's do this gently. And over time, it's very clear Xbox is training their customers to buy digitally when they do buy games. And so we're seeing the hardware side, the physical game side fall off. No word from Phil at all, even though in preservation and game library, that the physical is a pretty big part of that. No confirmation or denial, but I think no word at all says a little bit more. So we know COG, they're committed now. We know they're committed to at least another generation. We have some rumors and some leaks on what those things could be. And then we have with the library that they wish to at least maintain what you have now moving forward. So we have Greg Rygar writing in who says, hi, fellas. I've never owned an Xbox, but I can't get enough of the Dukes. Thank you, Greg. They tease some new hardware with more information this holiday season. Do we have a good idea what this is? If we win this coin toss in overtime, we take the ball first kind of day. Oh, man.
Yo, that's too soon, bro. That's too soon, bro. You can't be doing that, Rygar. I'm watching you. No doubt.
So, God, what do you think this hardware announcement is going to be?
If I had to guess, what was it called? Brooklyn, the one that was like the cylinder series. I envision, a revision. What we saw leak probably would be that. I am hearing rumblings of other things, but I don't want to jump out the window just yet. I know you're a fan of the G Cloud. Let's just say that. Yes. I've heard rumblings. I don't know how true these are, but yeah. Look, the vibe I got is that they want to show, and I felt this was going to happen. They want to show, because the biggest, I don't want to say fear-mongering thing coming into this, are they really going third party full on out, and that's it for hardware? And I think their mission, which I think they did accomplish today, which was to say, look, I think he said generations, plural, of hardware, right? Meaning not just one, the potential 2026 more stuff afterwards. So I think they want to be clear that this is still part of their vision. This is still part of their structure. And, we're hearing reports that, they're not getting out of hardware. So I think for a lot of people, that is going to be a risk. For us, we kind of in the know, we're kind of like, they're not going to go for hardware. But a lot of people thought this is a full-on Sega situation. Some people really thought that, like, hey, they're out and this is what's going to be. So, yeah, well, to me, it was refreshing to at least hear them say it. That's how I took it.
Yeah. When it comes to whatever's happening this holiday, we're thinking the question that wasn't answered, I didn't expect them to do, but I was very interested in learning when it comes to Xbox and hardware, if the next generation is starting in 2026 or is it starting in 2028, like we originally had assumed it was, right?
Right.
And if they're launching something holiday this year, and then they're planning to do something in 2026, let's just say hypothetically speaking, how much like is that too late into their potential generational window to then start transitioning? Like if someone buys, say, a digital only Series X at the end of 2024, they get a year and change mileage out of it before they hear that, like, hey, and guess what? In 2026, this is the next generation. So I wonder if that has adjusted or changed at all. Right now, those have just been rumors,
right? All
from
rumors.
unverified sources.
Yep.
But it's still worth considering. And it was really an exciting rumor, by the way, just because I love the idea of kind of trying to do what they did with the 360 again and running back that strategy, because that's nothing but good times, unlike lately, it seems. But I think it's going to be the digital only Series X. Phil has been pretty firm on the idea of like no Xbox Series Pro or new revision that's going to be more powerful. They seem very confident in the power of their console, and so we gave credibility to that. At first we were like, why? And then we heard the 2026 rumors, we're like, oh, that's why. But then you're releasing something so late. We thought that this was going to be announced or coming sooner, especially because it's kind of like a digital only revision. So I think it leaves some question marks about where this generation ends for Xbox. I don't think that was their job to answer here. I would have liked for them to, of course, but I don't think it was really a necessary talking point. That would have been revealing too much. But I think it's probably, Greg, the digital only Series X. I think this is a part of what I said earlier about like going scorched earth, getting as much hardware out there that can be played, that's appealing for people depending on their situation. I think this might be by that point, that might be where like we've sort of nudged over the edge to where Xbox is in the terms of releasing physical games, where it's like, okay, we have a better idea of like their commitment to digital versus physical when a digital only system gets announced at the end of the year. That'd be my guess. The new controller too, I think that's a obvious play in the playbook. So we'll see, but I don't think, maybe Keystone, maybe the dongle. We'll see, but that got shelved for a while. So I would personally feel most comfortable with my prediction of a Series X digital version.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And for the holiday. And then, to your other question about, the gap between a revision and then introducing new hardware. I mean, they've done it before, before the Xbox One X, right? And the Scorpio and all that. They made revisions to the old school Xbox One, and they had the slim, remember they had the slim version, the Xbox, One S and all that other stuff. So I've seen it before, and as the generation goes on, parts get cheaper. I hope the rumors are true. I would love for them to get a jump on 2026 it's more so about dictating your own pace. Because if you truly want consoles to improve your sales, right, there's a part of me that says if you have that lineup that is ready to go, which I feel was one of the Achilles heels of the Series X generation, was that lack of a Halo in the box, lack of compelling software with this great new hardware you have, but you don't have this compelling software to launch with it. I think that's a big deal. And then at that point, it would be most likely ahead of the PlayStation 5 Pro. And I love, again, if the rumors are to be true, that there's any dockable version or iteration, sign me up. You know what I'm saying? Like that's something I'm very much interested in. So we'll see what happens. But I just like the commitment to hardware overall, so that, I like that approach. That they're still willing to fight in that arena to keep that there. I think that's something for me that I care about.
Yeah. Now, what about, we have a write-in here from Brandon Garvin. So Sarah Bond seemed really excited to talk about hardware, rightly so, but it's, again, more talk about a more powerful console. As we've seen, powerful consoles don't equate to sales, games do. And while Xbox is the largest publisher across the three platforms now, like Phil had said, I think they still aren't seeing that games sell consoles, not the other way around. And so with that, Cog, I'm curious what you thought of some of the marketing speak potentially here of kind of the throwback to the world's most powerful console. Kind of doing that again by saying we're going to make the biggest leap in hardware ever. What we've learned over, I think, these last two generations is, what your development kit is and how easy it is to make games for your platform is really what defines that, less than the power. There was kind of a back and forth pretty early on about if the Xbox really was more powerful and like, could you squeeze as much out of it as possible compared to the PlayStation 5. And in a lot of third-party instances, Xbox got lapped despite maybe having better internals. So I think it comes down to the development kits and how developers are able to use them. But what do you make of sort of this idea here that they're once again leaning into most powerful hardware once more, which suggests, by the way, I think another, because now we can't be too safe in our assumptions, suggests another console, by the way, like another home console. But what are your thoughts on this? Also, by the way, with hardware in mind, we heard about the cloud hybrid hardware.
Yes.
And that still could be a factor in like what's powering it via cloud service versus what's powering it out of the box. We'll obviously learn more as we go on. But what do you make of Xbox's approach to this next generation from what we see thus far?
Yeah, look, I will say this. I like their approach here only because I thought it would be kind of a mistake to announce the hardware here, even though I know people may not like the vagueness. To me, what's important today was them trying to clarify the messaging about their games, their first party releases going up to multi-platform, and trying to get people's head around what they are trying to do. For the most part, they accomplished some and did not accomplish other things there. But hardware, I felt, should be separate. So the fact that they kind of had this, hey guys, we're still going to do stuff, that's all I took from it. Like, we are committed. Now, as far as, to Brandon's question in reference to, here we go again, most powerful console stuff. I don't think it's that. I really don't think so. Look, they are going to invest in powerful hardware. Clearly, they've kind of said that outright. But to their defense, they said we're not getting a pro console right now, which I think that is the right move. You haven't maximized what you currently have, and the games are now starting to come. So to me, I low-key always felt that if you look at it objectively, even with this Xbox One X, it didn't win them a generation for having that. What PlayStation had was the games. The difference this time is they literally have the games. I mean, not to console what is out, but I don't know if you saw Hiroki Totoki's comments from, the CEO of Sony about, hey, we don't have any first party major stuff coming for the rest of this year. Like that's a big deal because
from the existing franchises, I believe. Yeah,
exactly. So that's showing to me that they're relying on the time exclusive stuff in the beginning. That's not Xbox's situation. We know what the roadmap is. Like, we legitimately know, and there's still more that they haven't even pointed out. So if you look at objectively what would be in 2 years, it is massive undertaking. You could be having a Blade. You could be launching with a new Gears. You could, I don't know how close to Elder Scrolls 6 or whatever, a Perfect Dark. You've got titles that we know fit in that window, so it wouldn't be an Xbox Series X, no Halo, and we just playing some third-party game situation. Like, that's a big deal. That's the difference. You have to have compelling software. So I agree with Brandon that compelling software is more important, but I disagree in the sense that I don't think they're looking at it like, yeah, just throw out a more powerful box, they're going to buy it now. No, they know that you have to have the games, and now they got the studios and all these projects to commit to the games if they intend to launch in that window. And for me, that's pretty exciting. So we'll see. And hopefully, if that would help boost console sales, especially if they promote it right. So yeah. We'll see. And like last point, that's the reason why people are excited is if that happens, is because of the 360 era, their most successful generation. That I did challenge Colin on was part of the zeitgeist. It was a dominant era that PlayStation caught up at the tail end of the generation worldwide. But we're not going to
nudge.
We're not going to minimize how powerful the 360 was. And that was the defining, the zeitgeist of the generation for the majority of that generation. That I have to be clear on that. So that's why people are excited. Dictate terms, launch on your own, have the space to yourself, have the games at the time, and then maybe you could have better success.
Absolutely. We also have one more right in here. So we'll talk about like the future and how the reporting went versus what we got in a moment here. Derek Wachter writes in, hey Dukes, do we still think about the Xbox handheld, or do we still think the Xbox handheld is a viable reality? Cheers and be well. Based on what we heard today, Cog, I feel like they have every reason to do one of these. If your goal is to be on every screen, and it seems like Game Pass is the driving platform, and if Game Pass can't exist on Switch or can't exist on PlayStation because they're not interested or whatever the reason may be, you've got to go make your own pretty much, right? I think you can only get so much mileage out of putting a Game Pass app on say the ROG Ally and kind of putting marketing behind that, or putting the Xbox app, in the packaging for the Logitech G Cloud. Like, I think you can only get so far with that before you use the weight of your own brand, not to lift someone else's device up, but like push forward into a new market on your own. And, the theory was, or I'm sorry, not the theory, the rumor originally was that it was a dockable Series S kind of like device where, you could play it on the TV and play it on the go. And I think if Xbox can pull that kind of stuff off, I mean, dude, that would be huge, especially with their kind of cloud gaming scheme and how you can maintain the power of the console while still being able to play that game on the go. Like, that's the one thing that they've, I think, really got down this generation, whether you're streaming it or playing it through the cloud, that is, it's just been remarkable. And so if they can lean into that further in the way I think Nintendo is going, I say all this because I think Nintendo is going to do the same thing with their, whatever you call it, Super Switch, Switch 2, whatever it ends up being. I look at something like that where I don't know how Nintendo is going to catch up power-wise. I don't think they're interested in catching up fully power-wise, but shortening the gap will help them a lot, because I think third-party brings them to a whole different ball game versus like where they were at with the Wii U, where they had great exclusives, but they just didn't have the third-party support at all. So, yeah, when it comes to the Switch 2, I always said, like, the cloud versions of the Switch games now, like, it's not good. Like, you got to update that wireless adapter inside your device. Like, you got to figure some stuff out with that. Power needs to be a little bit better than what you find in a mobile phone, that sort of stuff, right? So if they can kind of close the gap there, then I think about Xbox, like what they could do, and it excites me. So I really hope, just beyond, I'm trying to leave my personal love of handhelds out of it, like just for what they offer and where they're going, it feels like such an obvious thing. Like, okay, you don't want to, like, if I'm the Xbox, I'm trying to think of, if every screen is an Xbox, you have to sometimes create your own scenarios for those, in that, okay, you don't want to use your phone because that's your device to text and call on. You don't want to use your TV because you only have one in the house. You need something to game on. Here's the handheld. Oh, you don't have room for a console. You live in like a small shoebox apartment. You have limited furniture space. Yeah. Here's this dongle. Like, I feel like they've got to explore an answer for everyone's situation almost, and just make it hard to not want an Xbox with all of these different price propositions and buy-in ways. Like, that was the strength. When Xbox was really selling well out the gate, it was because of the 2 SKU approach and the promises made. And I think because the promises weren't delivered, that's what led to the tapering off. And if they can sustain game output and maintain strong hardware output, I think they can crawl back pretty strongly. But I think a handheld would be a great fit for them. A great fit for them. It always has been. It always will be. I just hope one day they finally pull the trigger on it, because that would be super, super exciting.
Yeah, man, I got to admit, now this is one that Cog has to be honest and may have to take his L here. And this is one L I will happily take, because, look, I was of the firm belief that they wouldn't do it. They don't want to have it develop for a SKU, a lower SKU, and, put that much pressure on developers. But if the rumors are to be true for what we saw, Maddie, these rumors suggest that this would have parity, right? That you would pay more for the dockable version of the console. That, look, I got that ROG Ally, that Z1 Extreme, bro, is moving out here. It's running laps around my Series S and all that. Like, it's moving out here. And that's, what is it? RDNA 3, the performance is outstanding. And people are willing, when you look at the Steam Deck, we said on a crossover episode, Dustin made some good points in reference to, you have Steam out here living their best life. Got PlayStation games, Xbox games, PC games. And, if you're Xbox, you're like, yo, I don't want to give up no bread. I want all this cut, right? And what's the beauty of the Steam Deck, right? That UI. That beautiful UI that's just custom into their ecosystem. The problem, the only Achilles heel to my beloved ROG Ally, is nobody wants to deal with no damn Windows 11 interface. They want an Xbox baked interface. And if you want to throw a little hypervisor on that and allow, Steam, other things in the background, fine. If you want to have that, native Game Pass experience that people been craving, that again, there are going to be people, there's some demographics in some areas that are not going to buy an Xbox console like that. But if you give them a handheld, that could be the Trojan horse. And now that you're talking potentially no memory parity, because that's the only problem with the series. That's the same exact console, but the memory is less, which gives the developer more work and stuff. If you're telling me, look, I'll pay more for a dockable joint. I'm gonna tell you right now. I know but I will pay for a more powerful ROG Ally equivalent that has that parity and is dockable, and I can go on the go, and then I can still have my other joint that's underneath the TV, like a traditional 4K, all the bells and whistles, HDR, all that stuff. That, to me, is the future. And with their vision, last thing I say is I don't want to poo-poo the cross-play, cross-save. I've always felt that is the future of gaming. I have my ROG Ally. I play Cyberpunk. I come home. I have it in the bedroom, Series S. The saves go there. I go to the Series X. Saves are there. Go to PC. Saves are there. That's the future of gaming. Xbox is well equipped to do that. So I am all for that if that is the case. So yeah, I would love it for it to be a viability and a reality that they truly explore and put in the work for it. I would love to see them get in space.
100%. Let's talk a bit about blowing it out of proportion. I think now that we've covered the general exclusivity, Game Pass, hardware, kind of the major tentpoles, and we'll talk about the future after this, just of the brand, our thoughts and our expectations, all that stuff. But now that we have all this information, we've talked about it, we got it out of our systems, we have two different thoughts here that I wanted to cover. And I apologize in advance to Xbox Era, but they're mentioned in one of these. But, we'll talk about that in a moment.
We'll talk about it.
Switch Mitch Skates writes in, Dukes, after finishing up the announcements, I feel like the reporting we received over the last week was blown way out of proportion. Based on what we heard, I think we can infer Hi-Fi, Sea of Thieves, Pentiment, and probably Grounded are going multi-plat. I just don't see any reasons for the base to feel frustration over these titles, and I'm finding myself losing patience with the community more than the platform. I feel better about the platform after this announcement. Meanwhile, Matt writes in, oh, Dukes, man, after watching that update, I'm feeling two things simultaneously. First, I'm glad I chose Xbox when I was picking a platform. The things Xbox is trying to do are the things I think a gaming company should be trying to do. But second, I'm so disappointed in this community. Everyone loves to say that Microsoft sucks at messaging, and they constantly shoot themselves in the foot. But this update made me realize that it's not Microsoft that sucks at messaging, it's the community and gaming media that sucks. I hate calling out people, but Xbox Era did something so massively irresponsible in printing that story and then have the balls to shirk their responsibility. So much angst and pain came from their story, and now they are saying they could have said considering instead of planning, as if those two words mean the same thing. They made a conscious decision to play off Xbox fan fears to get some clicks, and I hope it was worth it to them. If nothing else, I hope this experience makes Xbox fans rethink where they get their information. A lot of creators showed who they are, and they did not show well. Xbox came out of that great developer direct with some momentum, and then, to not the fault of their own, they had to deal with their fans, they put in quotes, and gaming media knocking them down once again. It's getting old. But I do want to specifically highlight you both and other outlets out there that remained level-headed, rational, calm, and responsible. You all could have jumped on the bandwagon and gotten those hate clicks along with everyone else, and I'm very grateful you didn't. Grace and peace to you all. Thank you for writing in, Matt. It's funny if you read like YouTube comments and shit, people probably feel the opposite about us.
Fear-mongering, damn it.
I'll get into all that in a little bit. I want to hear from you though. Was it blown out of proportion? Like now that we've kind of aired a lot of the shit out here, was it blown out of proportion? I thought about originally opening with this, but I feel like that's such a weird tone, right? Like I wanted to talk about it all. So, Cog, what do you think?
This is where I'm at. Look, to an extent. It was blown out to an extent because there's always a part of me that says this. Always wait for the official announcement, right? However, in fairness to the leakers, the sourcers, the majority of this sourcing was coming from generally reputable people who, in the past have been correct, right? And I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to do that here, but they were running with what people thought was feasible. So I'm of two mindsets here. There's a part of me that, yes, is there a lot of fear mongering and doom and gloom sometimes in the X community? Absolutely. Unfortunately, this is what happens when you're the the New York Mets. You know what I'm saying? Look, you're not the first place system, right? So when things happen to you, you assume the worst, and you haven't had the history of this tremendous dominant success, right? So I get that. You know, there's also a part of me that's like, look, I am never going to tell someone how to feel, but also at the same time, wait until you get the official statement and then make your announcement and your assessment. But I will say this, and I will defend the leaguers on this part. There is a part of me that feel there is some truth to some of these reports with a lot of these games. Not every game, but some of these games. We had some big time names stating, hey, this Microsoft is considering blah, blah, blah title. Big names that were part of this too. Mm-hmm. So clearly something came across their line. I am still convinced, Maddie, that it was somewhat to that extent, and that internal fight in the building, Team A versus Team B, Team A went out and used this information to support their argument as to not accelerate this damn strategy so aggressively. I'm going to go to the grave on that. I have no factual information. This is all my assumption, because you know what is bad? I've never seen leaks like this to this extent. So I don't want to sit there and put a blanket statement that everyone's fear-mongering, everyone was clickbaiting, everyone had this evil agenda to destroy Microsoft. I'm not going to go that far, because I do feel that there was some truth to some of these, but it got to the top, in my opinion. It's like, look, we need that. I think, last point I'll say about it, I think Microsoft is genuinely shocked that a lot of this kind of got to where it got, and thus the needed for the 1 week accelerated business update. I think they were considering a slew of titles. They didn't finalize, if I had to guess, what these titles were. And I think as a result, I thought it was very interesting, Maddie, that they had to come out there and say, oh, but this is not going to be Starfield. It's not going to be, you're going to say that in the pocket, that means you're listening to what's going on, right? So you're shocked, like, whoa, we wasn't going to do all that. It was just these four, right? Whether or not that was the truth coming in, we won't know for sure. That'll be a Schreier report. So we'll get that at some point. Yeah. What really was going on in the building? Somebody gonna have to lead the company, and they're gonna start snitching, and we're gonna get all that information. Yeah. That's how that's gonna go. Yeah. But I'm of two mindsets. I just think the Xbox community we got to be real. It's a beaten up community, bro. They've been through a lot, and sometimes you do assume the worst. I say, unfortunately. But I always tell people, this is a lesson learned. Wait. Just before you do anything crazy drastic, wait. And for me, I can only speak for myself, my platform. I had a lot of this come across my line. I could have been first to a lot of this information. I could have made Lords of Gaming pop. My SEO would have been crazy. My videos, me and Addict sat there, yo, what we going to do? This seems like we got multiple sources verifying something. That's usually a chance to hit the button and go. I just didn't, it didn't sit with me. I was like, I'm not going to do it. And I'm glad I didn't, because literally 2 of them games got shut down. Now people go say, Cog, not officially because he backtracked on the one, but for now they were shut down. So yeah. I'm going to look crazy, right? I'm going to look, and that's the thing. I don't claim to be a leaker. This is where I'll give Switch it. Some people love the juice that being a leaker comes with, that I'm the guy that knows. Come to me. This is the reality I always see. This is that when it don't happen and you wrong, people gonna come up with the receipts. Yo, on the 5th, you said this was gonna happen. On the 8th, you said this was going. They gonna pull up your whole laundry list. I don't want to be that dude. Because these Twitter dudes is savage with it. like they don't play. They'll pull up your whole resume, your family history on leaks, and be like, yeah, he was wrong 85% of the time, and this is what happens. So if people say, hey, Cobb, what did you hear here? I'm hearing this. Can't guarantee it, but this is what I'm hearing, right? I'll say that. But I can't do it, because I came this close, Maddie. This close. Listen, nah.
That's crazy. What kind of pushed, if you don't let me ask it, what pushed you away from wanting to do it? Like, not viewership wise. I mean, I know there's always an ethical side to it, but what made you go like, this isn't worth the report?
Gut instinct.
Yeah.
My gut just said, it was just so much at one time. And I know what it was now, I remember. Myself said, if it is true, then it's going to be, I'll just lose the engagement. And, it's a lesson learned, right? But there was a part of me that says, this feels like someone is inside trying to get this out. And I don't want to be a part of it. Like, I just didn't want to be a part. The way it
ramped up so quick.
So I've never seen it, like 6 things at one time. This is happening. This is happening. I've never seen a dam break like this.
Yeah.
So it just, something didn't sit well with me. And I was just like, I'll regret it with the clicks, and I'll have to eat that. But we'll see what happens. And lo and behold,
you guys covered it though when it was happening, right? Or
listen, this is what happened. When we happened to do ILP on a Sunday. That's when the Starfield stuff broke, the Indiana Jones stuff broke, mad stuff was breaking while we're live. So I'm like, hey guys, I just gotta say this. This is what we're hearing, boom, boom. And shout out to Xbox Era. I had them on. I was like, hey, and I heard everything they had heard before them. You know what I'm saying? So I just and he was like, hey, this is what we're running with. I said, cool. And I had him, shout out to John Sigmund-Keiko. He came on, to say the report, whatever. So, you had that. I had Tom Henderson in my chat. I had Tom Warren. I had all of them in our chat.
All the leakers.
And I'm like, Tom Henderson, being that this out there, this is what Tom Henderson said. This is the funniest thing ever. I said, yo, I got X. I said, yo, Starfield, what's up? You confirmed you the dude. Come on now. He is like, I confirm that Xbox Era has said that. So he ain't want to jump on it. So I was like, you don't want to jump on it. All right, cool. So it was just interesting to see everyone's approach. And I'm not knocking anybody. But if you do that, there's also consequences, right? And that's what we're seeing here now with people kind of pushing back on a lot of the leakers and say, hey, what happened? Kind of thing. And I just don't want to be part of that because my platform has never really been that. And that's why I want to stay with it.
No, I totally get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've thoughts on both. Like when it comes to like what we heard versus what we got.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would say it was blown out of proportion. And it depends on your perspective because like the way I'm viewing it is I see it as it's going to happen eventually, just we're not doing it now. And in that sense, I feel like all these considerations are very important to keep in mind because while it may not be happening now, I agree with what Matt said. If like planning to versus considering is a different word usage, but what I will say is like when Tom Warren said like, hey, they're considering Indiana Jones, right? And it's like that's important to keep in mind because that might be one of the first to go when the if you will the dam breaks. So I don't like some people were selling like because it depends like. I don't think I had a super emotional, strong reaction where I was fucking losing my mind. Some people were selling their consoles, changing their media profiles. To me, that's my definition of blowing out of proportion. I was like, at least wait for them to say something before you do all that. If they tear down the walls, they're like, yeah, everything's multiplat, and then you react that way.
Absolutely.
Okay, right. But like when you react before that, so I don't know if I would say it was, from my point of view, super blown out of proportion, right? But it also goes to show, you mentioned leakers liking the juice, and like I'm going to have to say something here that's going to sound pretty hurtful to many a leaker, but the reality is like when you look at many of these prolific leakers, like their traction isn't there beyond the scoop they get. Like no one's there for them, right? Like we had one of our best episodes of Defining Duke last week, not because we were on the know of what was happening with all of this. It was because we are respected commentators and analysts and analysts of the industry. And there's a reason why people poured in that show, not because it was a big topic, but I'm not trying to gas this up too much. But look, I looked around the Xbox community at the conversations that were being had and what people were saying. Like I looked at what happened with Unlocked, and a lot of people felt misrepresented with that. People came to where they thought the conversation was good. And I think that's where a lot of the industry showed itself and its ability to understand the community. Many people just did not understand why Xbox fans were very upset at the matter and just thought like, oh, you're mad that someone's playing with your toys. And so when you look at the leak side of things, like, look, we've leaked things on this show in the past for sure. Very small things, but like, I think the last big one we did was Starfield's release window, which I was like, yeah, second half of 2023.
Right.
And that ended up being correct. And that was kind of like the last of it because what I learned at least is when you put a leak out there, it's just like, people are so fucking nasty, bro. I don't know why anyone bothers doing it. Like I get information from time to time. I don't even bother anymore because it's just people are really wicked online about it. It's a different beast from like your typical comment you get. It's not sensitivity. It's just like, it's a really weird kind of approach people have. Like, you better get this one right. It's like, like, okay, I thought information was power, but the lesson learned on that, I will not share unless I know for sure. And I feel like a lot of these leakers, because it is their business model, where our business model is our analysis, which we'll always be here for. You have to pull the trigger on every leak, every report you get, because people aren't listening otherwise. And I don't mean to be a dick to all of these various outlets, but that's just how it is. They're not there for them. They're there for the information. Otherwise, they don't care. And so I think there's been a lot of shooting the messenger. I think a lot of the reports are fair. Like Tom Warren saying, hey, Xbox is considering Indiana Jones. You're really going to go after him for saying they're considering that? Like, he didn't say it's happening. It's for sure. It's definite. And people are going after him. People have come after us and been like, you guys really blew that up. I'm like, this is the lose-lose situation that is the mass hysteria of gaming. If we didn't cover it, we would have not been doing our job. We would have been epically failing at a mass point in gaming. And if we do talk about it, we get that. We hyped it up. It's a situation where people cannot handle their own emotions and their own reactions, and they want to project and blame others for how they behaved. This happens every time. It's why I pulled out of the leak game, because every time people build up, they create their own expectations, and when it's not exactly what they drummed up in their head, it's your fault. Not theirs, it's your fault. It's our fault for talking about it. It's our fault for giving it attention when millions of people on the planet are doing the same. And I don't say that defensively. I say that as like a lot of shooting the messenger goes on. It's like, I say it because you can't have it both ways. You can't say, I want to know what's going on. And when you get that insight and it's there's mild changes in it, like, hey, Indiana Jones is being considered. It's not happening right now, but if you look in context of what Xbox is saying, that might be on that list, right? And when you look at all that, like, how wrong is Tom Warren? How wrong is he? Right? Like, is he super off base?
That's a great point.
And so I just, like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. If you want the information, it does come at the risk that companies see the shit react, because they're like, oh, man, people don't like that Indiana Jones is leaving the platform in 3 months, apparently. Fuck, get that off the list. And then people go to the reporter and they're like, yo, bro, what happened? Why isn't it going to PlayStation? It's like, probably because Xbox saw that whole reaction online and said, hey, Satya, hey, Tim Stewart. Yeah, look at this. Like, people really would lose their minds if we did this. Maybe we do these smaller games and start with those and then kind of eat. And that's the problem with it. It's like, was it blown out of proportion? For some, yes. Definitely the mega Xbox fanboys, 100%. But I think for the people talking about it, they're getting criminalized as badly for doing some of the base reporting. I'm not talking about Xbox era here. For some of the base reporting, they're getting criminalized, destroyed online for what? Giving information that likely forced a change in a positive sense for Xbox? I don't know, man. I think it's very backwards, and I don't bend over backwards for these types of journalists and whatnot. I don't. But it's kind of, it's ridiculous to me, because what do you want them to do? You'd get pissed at them if they sat on the information. Maybe someone will have a good response to it in the comments or follow up next week. I'm happy to talk about it more, but
absolutely,
I found it personally frustrating. Not even because people came at us. I'm like, whatever. People will complain about that literally either way, depending on how we reported on this situation. We did our job. But for the people who are kind of at the center of it all, that's definitely, like Cog mentioned, no audition to you. Like you mentioned right there, you were like, yeah, I got the information. It's kind of scary to report that, right? That's like a pretty earth-shattering thing.
Huge,
and like, yeah, that would command you a lot at ILP, or sorry, Lords of Gaming.
Oh, absolutely.
But is it worth it? And again, that goes back to the business model. Mine is viewership. So I can choose if I wanted to talk. I wanted to talk about Xbox. I, for the most part, for months, really hadn't. Just moving on to more like multi-plat stuff, Starfield specifically, I guess, in the Xbox family. But because views are my thing and it's based around me and my personality and my analysis, whether it be retro or not, it's like I have that choice. I don't think many of these outlets do. So they kind of force themselves to probably do that scary move.
Look, and I just want to be fair. Like, I don't knock the hustle. Like, I've had these ethical conversations with Xbox. I had these ethical conversations with Tom Henderson. And I'm just like, look, how do you feel when people say, yo, you putting this stuff out there? Because we know a lot of these companies don't like that, right? So he's just like, look, I got to do what's best for me. You know what I'm saying? I get that. But also know what comes with that, right? So now, where the situation is now, it feels like a refuting, right? Based on what Xbox did today, right? It feels like a refuting. And also the final point I will say is also, there are times that at this time it ain't happening. You know what I'm saying? We got to be clear too. In fairness, like at this time it's not happening because the door was open in that Verge interview. Let's be clear. The door was just a little creaky creak, just a little creak. That maybe down the road something can happen. So again, you never can know with this stuff, but it's a business. I try not to stay super involved in. Stuff does come across our line. We're not going to say that we've never done it. I'm not going to say I've never done it, but it's one of those things that there's weight with it, and just know when you get into it what can happen. I remember, they abused me with Halo Unreal stuff. I remember they abused you one time with Starfield stuff, and stuff ended up being true, but we weren't true in the moment. Remember? You know what I'm saying? So it's just, how it is. That's the game. That's the game. But this was a weird situation, man. I got to be honest. This was a weird one. I've never seen anything like this. Multiple. Yeah.
Yeah. I do agree that I didn't touch on one point that you had said earlier, which was about the Xbox fan base kind of being, would preyed upon be the right term here? Like,
I think so.
This is like a downtrodden fan base, and like Doomer News really works well. Like, one thing we definitely noticed with Defining Duke, like we'll use ourselves as an example because it's the best we can speak to. Like when Xbox News is pretty sour, like that's our biggest episodes, unfortunately.
Lit.
Yeah, like that's why a lot of people fucking got pissed at us for pumping Starfield because we really had fun with it. But that was like the one time we were actually getting an audience because we were having fun. Like, we weren't, it wasn't like, oh man, Redfall's a disaster. What the hell's going on with Halo Infinite? Who's getting fired? 343? Is Xbox dead? And so like all these episodes I'm listing out, go ahead and look up our most popular episodes. They're all based around trauma in the Xbox world. And so Starfield was this one moment. It's like, yo, we're excited. We love the game. Our community loves the game. This is fun. Like, let's have at it. Like and people are watching. This is great. And so our most viewed episode, not only of all of Last Stand last year, but for Defining Duke ever, was our Starfield review. Like that was really cool. So there is truth to the idea that like Xbox fans do, or I should say, people are drawn to Xbox's pain. When we have like I look at like Sacred Symbols, right, as like an example. Like when they have this kind of quarterly earnings report, it's more of a deeper cut news headline. Like, here's what we're doing strategy wise. We're going to PC and stuff. Like for the enthusiast, it's a big deal. For the casual, it's like, whatever, I'll see you when I see you, right? If we were to make an episode like that, it would not be as big of a deal. But for like PlayStation, it definitely is. So there's more of the enthusiast focus there. We're here. If it's like Xbox is removing games from PC, it's like, well, fuck, I got to tune in now. It's a totally different ball game here. And I'm proud that we really don't use that to our advantage unless it's entirely necessary. Right. And by that, I mean where it's like an undeniably sour story, last week, where the talk of the Xbox ending is upon us. And it's like, okay, well, that's kind of the scuttlebutt. Let's just label it around that. But yeah, I definitely think there's a degree of outlets and especially leakers for sure, taking advantage of that faucet, if you will, at Xbox, because that shit's dripping, man. There is always something coming out of there. And like, look at every other company, man. It is not locked down over at Xbox. And that was one thing I thought that they would maybe confront in this podcast is like, hey, here's how we're going to handle shit moving forward when we see a big leak like this. Like, because I do understand for some people, because the podcast is so small and Xbox said, we'll see you sometime next week. And they do this show on like a Thursday. It's like, okay, that felt like so built up all for nothing when, like it was such a long wait. Like, why couldn't you have done
a little more? No, that's absolutely fair. Absolutely not. I'm always on team. I'm always on team clear and concise, and I don't feel we got all of that at all. So I feel you on that. I think that's fair. It's a good assessment. Good assessment. I agree with you with the terminology as far as Xbox news and negative news tending to generate more engagement. It comes with the territory. But look, I like when we're also able to celebrate, and I'm always a fan of this of getting back to playing games, talking about games, and when we do literally enjoy what the platform is doing or games that the platform is putting out, I think that's dope to celebrate too. So we just hope that people would share that same engagement sometime.
Yeah, hopefully we have like a non-catastrophic story next week.
Yes.
Please show up.
We're employed now.
The last little subject I have here on our document, that we can kind of take this wherever we want. Gus writes in, hello, Dukes, writing in for the first time. Well, thank you, Gus. Welcome aboard. My question is simple. I would consider the both of you a bellwether for the hardcore Xbox gamer. You have your fingers on the pulse. Coming out of this podcast, do you guys have faith in Xbox delivering first-party content needed to grow their business for Xbox? Moreover, how do you guys define the Xbox business after this podcast? Please discuss. So I just wanted to use this as sort of a jumping off point, Cog, to talk about the future of the brand, which I know a lot of this conversation was centralized around, but like to kind of bring it back to its core, like what's our confidence level? What do we feel about, I wouldn't say the games necessarily, because I don't think there's a concern on the quality front right now, but how are we feeling about where things are going? Are you operating as business as usual? Would you, in a hypothetical situation, you have a friend, I'm looking at both consoles, which do I spend my money on? Is Xbox still a recommendation, or is it one with like an asterisk, like, hey, you could get one, but... So where do you stand on the future of this brand compared to where we were a couple weeks ago?
Look, in a weird way, not much has changed for me. I just got to be honest. This still becomes the platform where Game Pass is the driver. Game Pass is the platform for them, right? And them being on multiple devices is the platform. For someone coming into it to say, hey, Cog, I need to make a decision. Where do I go? Okay, if you want the AAA blockbuster narrative kind of story, like intense games, I would say definitely PlayStation is the place for you. I think that those type of experiences are more prevalent over there. Especially if you're a single player gamer, I feel that for sure. Now, granted, shout out to Helldivers and all that, doing well. I love to see that. As far as Xbox is concerned, I'm still going to stand by the fact that as far as one, the diversity in the game lineup. Two, one of the tenets, they are looking to keep acquiring the biggest games. So when you have an ABK, you see a Call of Duty and all that stuff, expect that to most likely be in Game Pass. The thing that I get out of this whole thing today is that Game Pass day and date is still part of the core messaging. And if you are okay, you have no emotionality to something potentially coming a year later, 6 months later, and you're fine because you're like, hey, I got it. I'm on this great service. I'm having fun. I'm good. And I'm playing it where I want to play it. Then they're for you. Especially also if you also play on PC or you're a person that plays on multiple platforms. So some people may say, hey, PlayStation could give me that and I could just wait. And that's fine too. I think ultimately it's going to come down to the games themselves. It always comes down to the games. And where I will say that I do feel confidence, and I think that's what had me frustrated with this whole situation, with whether they're multi-platform or not, is that they are literally on the mountaintop of the games now. They are literally the you see it right there. You're like, okay, this here, that here, Avowed's here, Hellblade's 2's here, like Indiana Jones is here, like, oh, they're here. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're looking for in 2024, who got the games? Oh, by the way, ABK. Oh, we even didn't talk about it. Like a big, obviously we did talk about it, but the Diablo thing, like, wow, that's in Game Pass on March. What is it? What they said, March 28th or whatever it was going to be. Call of Duty most likely is going to be in Game Pass. I'm going to assume by this verbiage, right? The biggest game, all Activision games are going to be in there. Blizzard games are going to be in there. Their commitment, their fulfillment. That's it. You just got to be willing to accept if there's no emotionality that you care about other people playing some of your games 6 months, a year later, or what have you, then yeah, I can still recommend the platform for sure. And last point, you can't deny the deal in gaming. If you are a consumer, you can't deny that part. Like that's still the best deal in gaming as far as the service. So that's it. It's a personal decision. What's the games that move you? If you're like, hey, Cog, I'm just about that, Final Fantasy this year. I'm just about that Rise of the Ronin. I get it. But if you're a person that's looking at it objectively and you look at year versus year, I cannot, how could I not recommend an Xbox to you based on the game lineup for 2024?
Yeah, for me, I have a lot of faith in the brand moving forward with its long-term vision. Like I foresee Xbox as a platform, I guess we'll call it,
Yeah.
being the spot in a number of years. Like, I think they're so future prepped. It's kind of stagnated, like the very near term, as in like,
yes, good
the
point.
games are coming out. We'll see what kind of hardware they move, if anyone balks at this or not. That's stuff that we can only tell as more data comes in. And as more subscriptions come in, but who knows? Today was our first update on Game Pass in a couple of years, right? So, I'm not holding my breath on that, but I definitely think long term, like, I see the vision. If they're right in where the industry is going, they are beautifully set up, and they are going to look very smart for this, because as the industry transition into like digital only and cloud gaming and stuff, like, because their services and everything were set up so well, I feel like they were a step ahead of the pack for most of the way. And so hopefully that continues to be the case, where it's an easy recommendation. Right now, for me, if someone was coming to me and they had the $500 in pocket, like Series X or PS5, it would not be the immediate like, go get an Xbox. It would be like more of, I still think there's a minor asterisk of like, look, they're here, they're not going anywhere. That's not what I'm getting at when I say there's the asterisk, by the way. But more so like, hey, they're moving. There's new hardware on the way. They might be doing a handheld. They might be doing a new digital only Series X. They have so many options available. You have PC. You have the money for PC. Can you shell out a couple extra $100? You want to just get that instead. So then you get what PlayStation's doing, which seems to be bringing their games to PC and Xbox. Like, PC, I feel like the asterisk was always there, but maybe it's a little bit bold now. Like, all right, hey, Game Pass is here. The value's undeniable, but you can get Game Pass on a lot of spots. So think about that, right? Like, do you have good internet? Maybe save yourself a couple $100, get a Logitech G Cloud gaming handheld, and just play through the cloud all the time on your home internet, and just do that, and then own a PS5. Like, I feel like there's so many ways to approach. And what I'm saying, I'm imagining some people will take issue with, but I think that's what Xbox wants, is that it's not like this surefire, go get yourself a box. It's like they want to be everywhere. Right. So I could sit here and tell you, well, there's a couple other ways you could go about it and still be there in that ecosystem in a meaningful way. So yeah, like, I have confidence in their long-term game plan. I don't know if like right now I'd be like, yo, go get a Series X, right? Like, just because I think it's about the content, and the content's about to come. And so you probably want to wait, see how that goes. And once you start to get all of that by the end of this year, not accounting for what last year brought, by the end of this year, you've got a lot of options to pick from, probably in hardware and also in software. So it'll be a good jumping in point by the holidays, where you'll be like, okay, we got Starfield, Hi-Fi, Indie, a highly updated Redfall. You can have
don't forget that Avowed.
Games like Avowed.
Don't forget that Hellblade too.
Yeah, you're gonna have a lot of options, and so I think that'll be a good jumping in point. But like, just right now in this immediate moment, I'm not saying go get a PlayStation, but I would say, watch carefully first before leaping in, because it's possible that, the console, I don't think it gets left behind, but I think that as they evolve as a platform, I'm just curious what Game Pass does. If Game Pass starts to dramatically transform, I think the Xbox will just be a host to that. But we're talking 5-10 years down the line, right? So, it's still a great system. A lot of great games there. I'm with you, Cog, on the first party lineup. Like, I find it tremendously exciting. I mean, it's hard to, compared to PlayStation, not be more excited, because like, we know way more about Xboxes compared to PlayStation. But I think their lineup is diverse and exciting, and not everything feels like super one note. And so that's compelling enough where I think it could pull enough people in over time. Right. I still think, they've taken a lot of egg on the face this last, which has been my favorite term this podcast. They've taken a lot of egg on the face, though, this start of the year outside of the developer direct. But I'm hoping it's kind of like the FTC situation, where you shake it off, pick yourself up, and still have a really good year. And I think I'm still standing by my statement that I think this is going to be a stronger year for Xbox than last year. You have ABK. We still have the lingering potential. You think it's more firmed up of Call of Duty and Game Pass. Right. You have a ton of exclusives coming. They did say 10 major releases this year. Obviously, somebody like Microsoft Flight Simulator, like, not everything's going to be a Hellblade 2, but you have these big games coming. And so I feel like we're in for a really good year as players. And as analysts, it's easy to get caught in the weeds, but I think at the end of the day, that's kind of what matters, right? Is like, what are we playing? What's here on this box? We have lots of great options, especially inbound. And so, yeah, I'm excited about the future still. Definitely, I wouldn't say I'm not concerned, or I should say, I definitely have my question marks, but I see the roadmap and the vision here. And I'm just curious how they're going to continue to approach that, because it looks like in their wait and see position that there still may be some changes made over time. So we'll see.
I think that's fair. I think you that's well said, as far as also letting things play out with the strategy, seeing what else happens. I think that's fair. Look, the final thing, I'm a gamer and a consumer first. I love to analyze the industry. I think this is fun what we do. This is part of exciting to see changes and inflection points. I think this is a form of an inflection point with the multi-platform strategy approach slowly starting to creep in. But at the same time, I care about what games I'm playing. You know what I'm saying? And man, I'm super excited for Hellblade 2. I'm super excited for Indiana Jones. It basically, the developer direct reinforced how excited I was for the games that I saw and the games that I know are still coming. So that's just where I'm at. So for me, yeah, maybe there's an inherent bias because, I do like these different style of games more so than, what the competition is offering me right now. And that's just where I'm at right now as a gamer. But it's a personal choice. And I think that you have to go with the games that excite you the most. And that's ultimately what it is. And if you're looking at the lineups, look at those games and say, okay, that one right there, I got to get that platform. And that decision is fine. I think that's totally fine.
100%. That's about it for our list of topics. Is there anything else on your mind when it comes to Xbox and its future that you want to dive into?
For me, like I said, again, this is my preferred platform. So, I just like the reiteration of Game Pass in the day and date. For me, it's big. I like that they kept that commitment. I was concerned that may still go. You never know. As for now, they were at least able to give me that definitively. Would have loved to know what the 4 games are, even though what's funny that we didn't talk about? They didn't see, we ain't going to tell you what the 4 games was, but, 2 of them are kind of live service. One is an indie game. I'm like, just say the damn game. Like, why are we doing cryptic backgrounds on what the games are, but we ain't, saying,
man. I'm ending on a positive note.
Hey, let me stop. So Xbox comms team, you know what I'm saying? Like, I love y'all and the messaging and PR, I love that, but we got to just sometimes
figure it out, guys. Just
rip it off. It's okay. Like we big boys, we good girls here. We can handle that. But maybe they think no, we can't. but some can. Maybe that's what it is. But that was all. I just thought that was funny. Yeah. But overall, to end the thing, some answers. Let's see how this thing continues to play out. Let's see what the showcase has for us. And I'm just glad that some of the core tenets of why I like the platform, for the most part, remain. That's where I'm at.
Absolutely, man. So we'll see. Certainly, there's going to be more information. We'll talk about this extensively next week as well, because I imagine more snippets and nuggets are going to come out from these interviews, and that we'll have to cover. But right now, we're here to stay, and that's good. And so we aim to have a normal week of Defining Duke next week with our usual roundup of gaming news. I mean, we are an Xbox podcast, so we don't mind dedicating everything to just Xbox. But the next week we're hoping to have a week dedicated to all of gaming. So we'll see where it goes. But Cog, any other closing thoughts, or are we ready to get out of here?
I think we're good. Looking forward to next week, another realm of the Dukes. I didn't get a chance to tell you all the stuff I've been playing, and we got to get back into that next week. And
it works for me. An embargo is going to lift in time for me.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so I got stuff that I can't wait to tell you what's going on.
Yeah, I'm excited about that
too. Nah, you good.
Yeah, man. So I guess the hashtag is all we need. I had an idea.
What you got?
DD remains. Kind of.
That's hard. I like that. Ooh,
at first, I couldn't tell if you were grossed out or you were digging it. Because you kind of like hold your head back. You're like, what the?
No, when I give you the, that means, you did that. That DD remains? Bro, I was looking at the unemployment line. I thought maybe I have to get this little stimulus check. What am I doing? Now I know I'm good. My future is bright again.
Yeah, we're feeling good here. So, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, You got this deep. You let us know your thoughts down below in the comments. Use the hashtag DDRemains, or you can go on Twitter. I'm at G27status. Cog is at Lord Cognito. Again, the hashtag DDRemains. We appreciate you. If you want to support us further, patreon.com/lastdaymedia. Get early access to important episodes like this, and all along with all of our other shows, from Sacred Symbols, Punching Up, Constellation, Summon Sign. I'm forgetting one. Knockback. Yeah, there's so much going on here. So we have a lot of shows, a lot to listen to, a lot of value. We haven't increased that price in a while. So enjoy the content, and consider supporting us. With that, take excellent care of yourselves, and we'll catch you next time on Defining Duke and Xbox Podcast. Peace out.
Defining Duke, an Xbox Podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is recorded from the United States of America. The show is conceived by Matthew Mr. Matty Plays Schroeder and me, Colin Moriarty, and is written and produced by Matthew Schroeder. Matty's co-host is Barry Lord Cognito Eversley. Defining Duke's executive producer is Dustin Furman, and the show is edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's shows, including Defining Duke, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer support level on Patreon, and we're thankful for your kindness and generosity.